Chapter 491. Is there no one capable in Korea? Fourth update. As Park Hae-shin's voice fell, Han Dong-shung and Park Hyun-dong, who were in the family temple, raised their heads in unison. Han Dong-shung was ecstatic. He had originally despaired about his fate. After all, it was impossible for them to kill their way into China to seek revenge on Mad Southern Yi. Who would have thought that Mad Southern Yi would come uninvited? How could this not make him excited? Park Hyun-dong frowned and said, "How did you know?" "Dad, someone from China told me. As for who it was, I don't know, but the other party told me Mad Southern Yi's flight information," Park Hae-shin replied. Park Hyun-dong remained silent. The Samsung group had just pressured China, and China had turned around and sold out Mad Southern Yi. It was too fast. No matter how one looked at it, this matter was a little strange. At this moment, an old man sitting in the corner slowly said, "Hee, it seems that Mad Southern Yi also has many enemies in China." The old man was wearing a plain robe and sitting on a wheelchair. There was an 8 trigrams pattern printed on his chest, and his body was filled with the aura of death. If one looked closely, they would discover that he had nothing below his waist, as if he had been cut off by a sharp weapon. "Uncle Jindo, why are you here too?" Park Hae-shin was shocked at first, but then she knelt on the ground. Although the old man in front of her looked like an old man without the lower half of his body, no one in the Park family dared to be disrespectful to him. Even Park Hyun-dong was no exception. Because his name was Jindo. He was an expert from Korea who had become famous 50 years ago. He had killed several experts in a row with half of his body paralyzed. His padao had reached the acme of perfection, and he was known as the Sword Saint. Rumor had it that he could quickly slash out 50 times in a second. From this, it could be seen that his strength was terrifying. And the rise of the Park family was also due to him. "I don't like being lonely when I'm old, so I came to visit my old friend." Jindo smiled amiably, without any aura on his body. Park Hyun-dong said in a deep voice, "Uncle, what you said just now is that someone in China wants to use us to kill someone." "That's right." Jindo nodded slightly and said, "There's a saying in China, where there are people, there is a pugilistic world. Since there is a pugilistic world, there is a struggle." "Uncle, then what about us?" Park Hae-shin asked hesitantly. "How can I not accept this gift that has been delivered to my doorstep?" Jindo's smile gradually turned cold. If Mad Southern Yi had stayed in China, we might not have been able to do anything to him. However, he has taken the initiative to come to Korea. Isn't it up to us to decide whether he lives or dies? Hae-shin, bring some people to the airport to kill Mad Southern Yi immediately. Remember, bring the 3 commanders of the Dark Shadow over as well. Park Hyun-dong also laughed. Also, bring along the laser gun that Samsung has secretly researched. No matter how powerful Mad Southern Yi is in China, he will still die. After more than 2 hours, the plane successfully landed in Korea. When the exit was no longer crowded, Yi-chin got off the plane and looked around. "Mr. Yi, please wait." A voice was heard. Lin Inua caught up to him and took the initiative to hand over a note. She was drenched in sweat as she said, "Mr. Yi, this is my contact information. We are all Chinese. If you have any difficulties in Korea, you can look for me." Chun Fong, who was behind her, was carrying large and small bags. His face was filled with displeasure. Back then, when he was chasing after Lin Inua, he pestered her for her contact information. Lin Inua refused to give it to him no matter what. In the end, Lin Inua actually took the initiative to give her contact information to Yi-chun. How long had they known each other? With this comparison, he found Yi-chun even more unpleasant to the eye. He could not help but snort coldly and say, "Inua, let's go. Don't waste time with irrelevant people." Yi-chun took the note from her and put it in his pocket. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked toward the airport exit. "What kind of person is this? Why are you showing such a stinky face?" Chun Fong said sourly. "Don't talk so much." Lin Inua looked at him coldly and took the lead to walk in front. She felt a little disappointed. He did not have any other thoughts about Yi-chun. He was just grateful. In the end, Chun Fong was so narrow-minded that he targeted him everywhere. On the other hand, Mr. Yi was neither arrogant nor rash from beginning to end. The difference between the two of them was obvious. Chun Feng's expression was extremely unsightly. He looked in the direction that Yi Chan had left in and thought to himself, "Brat, don't let me see you again. Otherwise, you'll suffer." Naturally, Yi Chan did not know what Chen Feng was thinking. At that moment, he had already walked out of Seoul Airport. He walked straight to the roadside and hailed a taxi. He said in standard Korean, to Girogu. It might be difficult for ordinary people to learn a foreign language in a short period of time, but for cultivators with their powerful divine will, they could master it in the time it took to brew a cup of tea as long as they watched a few Korean movies. The driver thought that he was from Korea, so he nodded and drove him in the direction of Girogu. Yichin sat in the back and took out a photo from his phone. It was a photo that he had taken for Meng Meng and Qian. Fortunately, he had taken this photo back then. Otherwise, it would have been even more difficult. As for why they were going to Girogu, it was because the people of Dragon Soul had found out that the last place Qian appeared was on the streets of Girogu. The car drove for less than 5 kilometers. Chapter 492. In addition to researching electronic products, Samsung had also conducted some secret experiments over the years, especially in the field of technology. For example, the laser gun, also known as the Halley's Comet Gun. Lasers were hailed as the greatest invention of the 20th century. They were known as the fastest knife, most accurate ruler, and brightest light. When used on guns, their speed was comparable to the speed of light, and they were not affected by wind speed and air friction. Moreover, the laser gun was also equipped with bullets made of special materials. Just one bullet could penetrate 3 non-overlapping brick walls in an instant. There was once a spy who tried to sneak into Samsung's secret experimental base to steal computer data. This person relied on his professionalism to run out of the experimental base and wanted to drive away. In the end, someone in the experimental base that was 100 meters away was able to kill him with just one bullet. Within this short distance of 100 meters, there were a total of 5 walls, and all of them were walls that could withstand a kilogram of TNT explosion without breaking. In addition, the person who used the gun was Samsung's greatest secret force, Dark Shadow. This was like dozens of martial Dao masters, each carrying a mortar to chase after a dragon. Therefore, even if they knew that Yi Chun was the #1 person in China, Park Haixin and the Park family had the confidence to kill him. After all, no matter how powerful you were still human, facing Park Haixin's complacency. However, Yi Chun laughed out loud. Park Haixin felt as if she had been insulted and could not help but roar. "What are you laughing at? You're still laughing when you're about to die. I'm laughing at how ignorant you are and how reckless you are." Yi Chun stood with his hands behind his back and shook his head slightly. "How dare you deal with me with just 20 pieces of trash and so-called technology?" He was now at the foundation establishment stage, and with his freakish physical body, not to mention laser guns and armor-piercing bullets, even if Korea used missiles, they would not be able to hurt him at all. "Kill him." Park Haixin suddenly waved her hand, and dozens of laser guns fired at him at the same time. Countless lasers fell like meteors. When she looked again, Yi Chun was still safe and sound. Instead, he walked toward Park Haixin step by step with his hands behind his back. "How is this possible? How is this possible?" Park Haixin's expression changed, as if she had seen something unbelievable. The 20 or so Dark Shadow members she had brought along also revealed expressions as if they had seen a ghost. Ka ka ka. This time, without waiting for Park Haixin's orders, more than 20 Shadow members took out a golden, long, and sharp bullet from their bodies. The bullet was about the size of an adult's middle finger, and in the blink of an eye, it was loaded into the magazine. This was the bullet developed by Samsung. Just one of them was enough to penetrate 3 20-centimeters thick walls. Bang, bang. With a series of loud bangs, dozens of bullets hit Yi Chen's body. At that moment, sparks flew everywhere, and all these bullets were bounced off. Some of the Shadow members who were close to Yi Chen were blown up by the ricocheted bullets. All of the power of a 3-star fighter was useless before Yi Chen. Park Haixin's face was filled with extreme fear. Seeing that Yi Chen was getting closer and closer, she could not help but panic. "Stop him, stop him." Swoosh. The three leading Dark Shadow commanders attacked him like ghosts. These three people were the strongest among all the Dark Shadow members. Each of them was strong enough to fight against three great grandmasters. Yi Chen's figure flashed, and he passed through the three of them. Almost at that moment, their bodies suddenly collapsed into ashes. They did not even have the time to scream. Seeing this scene, the eyes of the few remaining people revealed extreme fear. Was he a human or a ghost? Devil, he's a devil. No one knew who shouted, but he turned around and ran with a face full of fear. Then, he led everyone to stagger and run into the distance. Yes, they were afraid. This was the nightmare of the shadow. However, they had only run a few steps when they felt a huge suction force coming from behind them. It was as if they were grabbed by an invisible hand, and they could not move. Yi Chen's eyes were as cold as knives as he took a step forward. Bang! The body of the shadow member closest to him exploded. He killed one person with one step. He took another step. Bang! Another person exploded into a mist of blood. The third step. During the entire process, Park Haishin fell to the ground. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and her face was as pale as a sheet. Everything that she was proud of in Samsung was in front of Yi Chen. It seemed too fragile. She began to regret it. She wanted to run. However, she could not muster up any strength at all. She could only watch Yi Chen walk towards her step by step with a face full of despair and terror. With every step he took, one of the people she brought with her would die. When Yi Chen approached, she suddenly trembled and peed on the spot. Don't kill me, don't kill me. I can give you money. As long as you want, I can give it to you. I'm a director of Samsung. I have 12% of the shares. I also have 5 private companies and 8 properties. I can give all of these to you, but as long as you don't kill me. Yi Chen smiled disdainfully in the face of her subservience. He raised his hand and grabbed her. I didn't come to look for you, but you took the initiative to look for me. Since that's the case, take me to the Park family. Park family. Park Hyundong and Jindo, who was sitting in a wheelchair, were leisurely playing chess. Han Dongsheng was still kneeling on the ground without moving, but he could not hide the excitement between his brows. In his opinion, the outcome of Park Haishin bringing Samsung's Shadow and the most advanced technology to deal with Mad Southern Yi was obvious. In that case, he might not have to die. Park Hyundong crossed the Chu River and Han border with a red cannon in his hand. He knocked off Jindo's elephant on the spot. Then, he said in a deep voice, Uncle, if Mad Southern Yi dies in Korea, do you think China will take the opportunity to make things difficult for us? Although Mad Southern Yi was strong, he was only one person after all. Compared to him, China was the one to be feared. No! Jindo pushed the soldier out and said without raising his head, China is a vast land with abundant resources. There are many talented people. If one Mad Southern Yi dies, there will be a second Mad Southern Zhao and a third Mad Southern Yang. At this point, he smiled faintly and pointed at his eaten elephant. Just like this elephant. After it's eaten, I still have an elephant and 2 soldiers. Moreover, according to the information we received, Mad Southern Yi doesn't hold a position in China's officialdom or military. His apt analogy made Park Hyundong completely relax. From the beginning to the end, the two of them did not talk about whether Park Haishin could kill Mad Southern Yi because it was not worth discussing. That was a fact that was already destined. Just at this moment, an enormous sound that shook the heavens and the earth resounded from outside, and it caused the two of them to be shocked. A young man ran in a panic and stammered, Bad news, master, someone is here. Chapter 493. Bang! The young man's words shocked Park Hyundong and his companion. The chess cards in front of them were immediately overturned on the spot. Who dares to be so bold? Park Hyundong slammed the table and stood up, his expression extremely gloomy. His Park family was a true wealthy family in Korea. Not to mention ordinary commoners. Even the Kim family, the Lee family, and the Han family, who were also part of the 4 wealthiest families, did not dare to attack them. Not to mention the Park family's status and power in the political and military circles of Korea. Just the location of the Park family's villa alone was a village that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. The entire village had up to 2,000 people. These people had served the Park family for generations, from peddlers and pawns to soldiers and scientists. It could be said that these people were all people with all kinds of specialties. Most importantly, the Park family had a private guard team recognized by the country. There were as many as 800 members, and each of them was equipped with all kinds of advanced and top-notch technological firearms, and even secret cannons. With such armed forces, even if a mercenary group of as many as 5,000 people wanted to break in, it would be impossible for them to do so without 6 to 10 hours. Now, he actually heard the news that someone had come knocking on their door. How could this not shock Park Hyundong? Could it be that the parliament had found out about the Park family? Or could it be that the Li family and the Han family had joined forces? In just a few short breaths, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. The young man who came in to report was oppressed by the powerful aura of the two people and stammered, It's Miss and a young man. Haishin is back. Park Hyundong's expression changed as he subconsciously exclaimed, Didn't she go to kill Mad Southerny? Why is she back so soon? At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Jindo beside him. Could that young man be Mad Southerny? Let's go and take a look. He didn't have time to think too much and immediately ran out. At this moment, at the entrance of Nanyuan village, where the Park family was located, Yichen stood at the entrance of the village, grabbing Park Haishin with one hand. He looked indifferently at the villagers blocking the entrance of the village with all kinds of weapons in their hands. There were at least 1,000 of them. Rather than calling them villagers, these people were more like regular soldiers. They were all fully armed, and each of them had a firearm in their hands. They all looked at Yi Chun with a murderous look. If it weren't for Park Haishin, who was a hostage, these people would have opened fire long ago. It's indeed mad, Southern Yi. Park Hyundong, who had rushed over after hearing the news, had an extremely gloomy expression the moment he saw Yi Chun. It was obvious that he hadn't expected that not only had Park Haishin's assassination failed, but he had also fallen into Yi Chen's hands. Big brother, Hui Xin is in his hands. What should we do? An elder from the Park family hurried over. Park Hyundong waved his hand and gestured for the people in front of him to retreat. Then, he took a step forward and looked at Yi Chun. Are you Mad Southern from China? Since you know it's me, you should come and kowtow to me now to accept your death. Yi Chun said calmly with his arms behind his back. Park Haishin cried for help. Dad, save me, save me. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone burst into an uproar. Clearly, he did not expect the ordinary-looking person who had captured the young mistress to be the famous powerhouse in China, Mad Southern Yi. But then they got angry. This was because they were all members of the Park family. They were proud to be born in the Park family, and they valued the honor of the Park family more than their lives. Yi Chun had captured Park Haishin and attacked the Park family. It was equivalent to looking down on them. How dare a Chinese dog be so arrogant? Kill him. That's right. He really thinks he's a god. He actually dared to barge into our Park family alone. He's simply courting death. Park Hyundong raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. Then, he looked at Yi Chun and said coldly, Mad Southern Yi, you kill my grandson, Zimming, and capture my daughter. Now, you forcefully barge into my Park family. Aren't you looking down on my Park family too much? Where are the guards? As soon as he finished speaking, hundreds of people in black armor suddenly jumped out of the crowd in an orderly manner. They lined up in 2 rows, and the black muzzles of their guns were pointed at Yi Chun. They were silent, as if hundreds of giant beasts were eyeing their prey. Park Hyundong said lightly, Mad Southern Yi, I'll give you a chance now. Let go of Hui Xin, and we might even leave your corpse intact. However, Yi Chun did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He took a step forward and said, Han Zimming coveted my woman, so he deserved to die. Your Park family used the Samsung Group to pressure China for your own selfish interests. You deserve to die 10,000 times for your crimes. Therefore, I'm here today to destroy you all. Be *starred. Park Hyundong flew into a rage. Kill him. Master, the young mistress. One of his subordinates could not bear it. He was the captain of the Park family's guards, Park Ching. Kill. Park Hyundong's killing intent was revealed. Even if his daughter was gone, he could still have another one. But the Park family could not be humiliated. Park Hai-shin, who was held in Yi Chen's hand, trembled violently when she heard this. She looked at him in disbelief. Dad! She had never expected this. Under such circumstances, her grandfather had actually given up on her. However, reality did not allow her to think too much. As the captain of the Park family's guards, Park Ching's expression hardened as he suddenly shouted, "Open fire!" The next moment, bullets that blotted out the sky and covered the earth shot toward Yi Chun like dense raindrops. Under such a dense barrage of bullets, if it were a martial arts grandmaster, they would also die on the spot. No, I don't want to die. Seeing this, Park Hai-shin was almost scared out of her wits. He was very clear about the Park family's firearms and explosives. All of them were products of the Samsung Group's secret experiments. With so many guns fired at the same time, even a commercial building would be shot into a sieve. Kill this Chinese dog. Many of the onlookers revealed cruel smiles. However, in the next moment, they saw an unforgettable scene. When the rain-like bullets were about to reach Yi Chun, they suddenly stopped. They floated in the air without moving, as if they had frozen. How is this possible? At this moment, everyone was shocked. Even Park Hyun-dong, who was in the crowd, was no exception. Park Hai-shin, who had thought that she would definitely die, subconsciously opened her eyes to take a look. Her heart was instantly filled with shock. Even bullets were useless against him. Was he still King human? In the next moment, Yi Chun took a step forward as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. If one looked closely, they would notice that the space around him fluctuated slightly. Then, he suddenly waved his hand. The bullets that had been stationary in midair moved. However, they were indeed shot back. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The bullets that were shot back were like crossbows that pierced through the air. They directly passed through the foreheads of the Park family's guards, and hundreds of blood swords flew out from the back of their heads. Bang, bang, bang. With the sound of someone falling to the ground, hundreds of cold corpses appeared on the ground. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the surroundings were deathly silent. The expressions on everyone's faces froze, leaving only shock on their faces. How is this possible? Park Hyun-dong couldn't believe his eyes. From the beginning to the end, Yi Chen's expression remained the same, as if he had done something very ordinary. He turned his gaze to Park Hyun-dong in the distance and stretched out his hand slightly. Get over here and die. In the next moment, Park Hyun-dong felt an incomparably huge suction force coming towards him. He flew towards Yi Chun uncontrollably. In his shock, he hurriedly shouted, "Uncle, save me, save me." Boom! A dazzling blade gleam streaked across the sky and slashed straight at Yi Chun. It was mixed with endless blade intent, as if it wanted to split the world into two. Yi Chun's expression did not change. He calmly raised his hand to neutralize the blade gleam. Then, he looked at an old man sitting in a wheelchair. Chapter 494. Following Yi Chen's gaze, he saw an old man sitting in a wheelchair 50 steps away. The old man was extremely ordinary, like a skinny old man. He was so ordinary that people could ignore him. However, it was such a person who had just slashed out a blade chi and saved Park Hyun-dong from Yi Chun. It's Master Jindo. Someone in the crowd let out a cry of surprise, which was followed by a series of gasps. Everyone looked at the old man on the wheelchair with faces full of worship. Jindo, a powerhouse who had become famous in Korea 50 years ago. Rumor had it that after he was in his 20s, he had continuously joined the various saber clubs and sects in Korea. In just 30 years, he had joined more than 100 sections. He had gathered the strengths of hundreds of sects and finally comprehended the 9 techniques of the Jindo. The day he mastered the saber technique, one saber cut through the waterfall. One saber beheaded thousands of people. Such a person had disappeared at his peak. In the blink of an eye, 50 years had passed. Everyone thought he was dead, but they didn't expect him to appear in the Park family. In the face of everyone's fervor, Jindo appeared very calm. The depths of his pair of old eyes revealed the aura of time, as if he was used to seeing all kinds of things in the world. Uncle, Park Hyundong, who had been saved, was overjoyed. He subconsciously walked in front of him and wanted to push the wheelchair. Jindo shook his head slightly, indicating for him to step back. Then, he suddenly pressed the armrest of the wheelchair with both palms. Under everyone's shocked expressions, the wheelchair floated up from the ground and was 4 to 5 feet off the ground. The next moment, the wheelchair landed less than 5 steps away from Yichun. He glanced at the corpses on the ground, then frowned and said, "Mad Southern Yi, as a Chinese expert, don't you think you're losing the demeanor of an expert by killing innocent people like this?" As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes turned red. The 800 guard of the Park family had all died in Yi Chen's hands. Every one of them was related to the people present. They were either nephews or relatives. The most excited person was Park Hyundong. In order to nurture such a team, the Park family had paid an incomparable price. However, at this moment, all of them had died in Yi Chen's hands. How could his heart not ache to the extreme? Facing Jindo's accusation, Yi Chen said expressionlessly, "From the moment the Park family provoked me, all of this was destined." Ever since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, his mindset had changed. He only pursued killing as he pleased, destroying as he pleased, and humiliating as he pleased. Who in the world could stop him? Could God block it? Could all the Buddhas in the sky stop them? As the saying goes, those who are not of the same race are bound to have different intentions. He had always been hostile towards these people in front of him. As his voice fell, Park Hyundong's eyes were wide open, and his face was flushed red as he cursed angrily. "Uncle, kill him, kill him. We must tear him into pieces. Master Jindao, kill that Chinese dog." All the members of the Park family kneeled down in unison. "You must die for insulting my country." The word Chinese dog made Yi Chen's eyes flash with ferocity. Subsequently, a terrifying aura exploded from his body all of a sudden. The aura was like a surging tide that crushed the surroundings crazily. Bang, bang, bang. The bodies of the people kneeling on the ground exploded simultaneously, turning into snow mist that filled the sky. It was as if a heavy bomb had been thrown into the crowd. These people did not even have the time to scream. Only a portion of the people standing far away were not affected. "How dare you? Mad Southern Yi, you're bullying my Korea?" Jindao roared angrily, and a long blade suddenly appeared in his hand. The blade was narrow, and the wooden handle was long and thin. It was a little similar to a spear. This was a padao, also known as a fighting blade. It had been passed down from ancient China, and it was a weapon with a long and wide steel blade on a wooden handle. When using it, one held the hilt with both hands, just like using a broadsword, and used the blade and the weight of the blade to kill the enemy. Almost every hero in Water Margin was equipped with a padao. Because the padao could be disassembled, the stick could also be disassembled to defend against the enemy, and the remaining blade could be used for farming and chopping firewood. The moment Jindao held the padao, the aura on his body suddenly changed. He no longer looked like a skinny old man from before. Instead, he looked like a soldier who was about to go to war. After witnessing Yi Chen's previous methods, he knew that he might not be Yi Chen's match. However, this still could not stop the battle intent in his heart. 40 to 50 years, the wind and rain are like a cloud, never to be seen again. Fleeting clouds, life and death are like a silver lining. His face was terrifyingly gloomy, and his eyes revealed an intimidating light. He had been to China in his early years, so he understood Chinese culture. The mountains stretched for thousands of miles, but they could not stop the trace of battle intent in his heart. His blood was surging, and the broadsword was whistling. A man has not made 50 contributions, but he will raise his saber and face the world alone. He had cultivated the saber all his life. The saber was his Tao. 50 years ago, he had fought with someone, but he was shocked to find that his persistence and pride were just a saber in the other party's eyes. That saber. Everything below his waist had been cut off. That saber. It had also shattered his confidence. He had been silent for 50 years, and he had never drawn his saber again. Today, Yi Chun had once again stimulated the saber intent in his heart. Mad Southern Yi, 50 years ago, my lower body was cut off by a Chinese powerhouse. I've been silent for 50 years to sharpen a saber. Today, I'll return it to you. Golden Saber gave a fierce cry and slashed out with his saber. Boom! The wind blew, like a speck of dust rising from the green duckweed. A saber gleam streaked across the sky. The strong wind and the saber gleam seemed to form a river, flowing eastward with unstoppable momentum. When the saber gleam fell, suddenly, the saber gleam between heaven and earth was dazzling. The remaining members of the Park family, including Park Hyundong, felt a bone-piercing gust of wind, causing their expressions to change. They had never seen a person who could create such power with a single saber strike. As expected of Master Jindao, I thought that Master Jindao was old and weak, but I didn't expect him to become even more terrifying. With this saber strike, the Chinese dog will definitely die. Everyone was extremely excited. Meanwhile, the thousands of saber gleams in the air finally gathered into a giant saber shadow that was dozens of feet wide and slashed at Yi Chen's head. Not only did you comprehend saber intent with a crippled body, but you also fused the concept of life and death into it. From this, it can be seen that you are also a person with great perseverance and wisdom. If you had used this saber strike on me half a year ago, I might have only been able to rely on my physical body to resist it. Unfortunately, I'm currently at the foundation building stage. Yi Chen placed his hands behind his back and shook his head slightly. Jindao's saber strike was enough to kill any martial Dao master. Even a half-step martial venerable was no exception. Moreover, it was the kind that could not be dodged. Unfortunately, he was facing Yi Chun, who had already broken through to the foundation building stage. At this moment, his supernatural power had increased by more than 10 times compared to before. The number of abilities and spells that he could use were countless. Divine Fist created in 33 days, Dragon Claw. Yi Chen chuckled softly. He grabbed Park Hai-shin with one hand and used his other hand to grab the huge saber gleam that was charging at him. Chapter 495. The next moment, everyone saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. A huge golden hand rose into the sky. It was vast and majestic. The huge golden hand accurately grabbed the huge saber beam. The huge saber beam wanted to destroy everything. However, the huge golden hand was incomparably domineering. Bang! With a loud bang, the huge golden hand instantly crushed the huge saber beam. The huge saber beam did not have the slightest bit of resistance, as if it was destroying rotten wood. The center of the battle between the two of them set off waves of explosions. Endless smoke and dust filled the surroundings. Jindo felt a sweetness in his throat, and he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. In the endless smoke and dust, he could vaguely see a thin figure standing proudly with his hands behind his back. China. After the Skyblade. Why did China produce such a monster? With every word Jindo said, he would spit out a mouthful of blood, and the aura on his body would weaken a little. In the end, his eyes closed heavily, and his body was filled with the aura of death. Bang! The four-wheeled wheelchair fell from the sky and smashed heavily onto the ground. It instantly shattered into pieces, and Jindo's figure fell to the ground motionlessly. The smile on his face froze. Insure, you've met a good opponent. The world was dead silent. At this moment, the remaining members of the Park family were silent. Their eyes were fixed on the black-haired, thin, and ordinary-looking young man. Master Jindo, whom they had high hopes for, had been defeated. He was also dead. This powerhouse who had dominated Korea for 50 years was dead. From the beginning to the end, the young man from China had only used one move to break Master Jindo's all-out attack. He had displayed unparalleled combat power and terror. The Park family had actually provoked such a person. Uncle. Park Hyundong pounced on Jindo's corpse and wailed. It was as if he had aged dozens of years. The Park family was able to achieve what they had today because of Jindo's promotion. Jindo treated him like a nephew. Now that he had died because of the Park family, how could he not be filled with grief? Park Haishin's face was numb and lifeless. It was as if her soul had been sucked out. Facing everyone's expressions, Yi Chun didn't say a word. He grabbed Park Haishin with one hand and slowly walked towards Park Hyundong. With every step he took, the killing intent on his body became stronger. Kill, kill. Park Hyundong slowly turned his face and looked at him numbly. He actually laughed. The winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. If we want to blame someone, we can only blame ourselves for underestimating your strength. The most powerful person in China, you really live up to your name. After saying that, he slowly closed his eyes. Yichen was about to slap down when Park Haishin, who was in his hand, suddenly struggled. No, don't kill my father. Mad Southern Yi, I beg you. This matter has been my fault from beginning to end. It has nothing to do with my father. If you want to kill someone, kill me. Park Haishin seemed to have been provoked by something and begged bitterly. Mad Southern Yi, you've killed enough people for my Park family. I beg you, let my father and the others go. If she was given another chance, no matter what, she wouldn't choose to attack Yichun. For the sake of a son, more than half of the Park family, which had existed for 100 years, had died or been injured, and she had even implicated Master Jindo. That's right, don't kill us. All of this was caused by that be *TCH, Park Haishin. If you want to kill someone, kill her. Yes, yes, yes. From beginning to end. It has nothing to do with us. The people around them knelt down one after another and begged. Yi Chen's eyes were as cold as knives as he slowly said, as the saying goes, cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. I won't leave an unstable factor to threaten me. No, Park Haishin cried. We're willing to submit. We're willing to submit. As long as you don't kill us, everyone in the Park family is willing to be your slaves. Everything in the Park family is yours. Yichen didn't say a word, but he looked at Park Hyundong. How could Park Hyundong not understand what he meant? He immediately knelt respectfully in front of Yichun and smiled bitterly. Mad Southern Yi, the Park family is willing to submit. Take these pills. Yichun let go of Park Haishin and flicked his finger. A few pills fell into the hands of the Park family's upper echelons. These are soul-devouring and bone-rotting pills. If you have the slightest intention of rebelling, the pills will take effect. They will make your spirits, and even your souls, suffer the most severe torture in this world. Yi Chun had originally planned to destroy the Park family. However, after the Park family took the initiative to submit, he changed his decision. After all, the Park family was considered a wealthy family in Korea. Once they were destroyed, Korea would definitely be shaken, and then it would affect China. Moreover, he was here to look for Chantian. With the Park family's influence in Korea, he might get twice the result with half the effort. Park Haishin was the first to take the pill. Meeting Yi Chen's cold gaze, Park Hyundong didn't dare to hesitate and also took the lead to swallow the pill. After the Park family's upper echelons ate the pill, one of them suddenly screamed and kept rolling on the ground. His entire face was twisted as if he had suffered some kind of pain. The next moment, his entire body turned into a pool of blood on the spot. Seeing this scene, everyone was so scared that their faces turned pale. This is what happened to him. If any of you want to be like him, you can try having a trace of rebellious thoughts in your hearts. Yi Chen snorted coldly. There was no trace of pity on his face. We wouldn't dare. Park Hyundong and the others trembled and lowered their heads. They were completely scared out of their wits and didn't dare to let their imaginations run wild. 2 hours later, in the Park family's living room, Yi Chen sat on the sofa and looked expressionlessly at Park Hyundong and the others who were standing in front of him. I'm here to look for a little girl. Her name is Chantian. The last place she appeared was in Girogu. I don't care what method you use, but you must find her within 3 days. May I ask, Master, what are the characteristics of the person you're looking for? Park Haishin lowered her posture and asked while trembling with fear. Yes. Yi Chun sent Chantian's photos to them one by one and reiterated, remember, I'll only give you 3 days. If you can't find her, the Park family will have no value in existing. Yes. Park Hyundong's body trembled, and he immediately went to make arrangements. As one of the wealthy families in Korea, the Park family was naturally paid attention to by other forces all the time. The matter of Yi Chun swaggering over to the Park family to kill people naturally couldn't escape their attention, especially the battle between Jindo and Yi Chun. The commotion caused by it could even be felt by people several miles away. As one of the four wealthy families in Korea, the Kim family. At this moment, several of the Kim family's higher-ups were staring at the video on the wall with solemn expressions. In the video, they saw a young man in black grabbing a woman in each hand. His back was facing them as he wantonly slaughtered the members of the Park family, including the battle with Jindo. After the video was played, the eyes of an old man sitting at the head of the table flickered nonstop. Who exactly is this person? Entering the Park family is like entering an uninhabited land. Even a cripple like Jindo can't do anything to him. P.S. Chapter 2. There's still one more chapter. Chapter 496. After the old man at the head of the table finished speaking, he turned off the video and looked up at the people in front of him. There was no expression on his face. He was the head of the Kim family, Kim Hong-yu. That's right. Jindo's strength was second to none in Korea in his early years, but he wasn't weak either. If not for the fact that his lower body was cut off, he would even have the ability to fight the patriarch. Another person said in a deep voice. A middle-aged woman frowned and said, looking at this person's back and clothes, he doesn't look like a Korean. Instead, he looks like a Chinese expert. At this point, her expression suddenly changed as if she had thought of something. I know. This person is most likely the number one person in China. Mad Southern Yi. What? It's actually him. Everyone could not help but turn pale with fright. The words Mad Southern Yi seemed to be a taboo, causing the entire room to fall silent for a moment. Even the head of the Kim family, Kim Hong-yu, was no exception. A moment later, Kim Hong-yu said in a deep voice, then it must be him. Rumor has it that Mad Southern Yi is the number one person in China and also the youngest powerhouse. Ever since he debuted, he has never tasted defeat and is known as the undefeatable Mad Southern. It's not surprising that he can kill Jindo. That's right. I heard that Han Dongsheng died in the hands of Mad Southern Yi. The day before yesterday, the Park family even used Samsung to pressure China. Then it makes sense for Mad Southern Yi to go to the Park family. Another person nodded. The young woman from before said, brother, the Park family and our Kim family have always been on the same side. Will Mad Southern Yi attack our Kim family as well? The moment these words were spoken, the expressions of the few of them changed. What are you afraid of? A man from the Kim family snorted coldly and sneered. Although our Kim family and the Park family are among the four great families, our Kim family is not as useless as the Park family. Don't forget that we still have the patriarch. If Mad Southern Yi dares to come, then he won't be able to leave. His face was filled with pride. It was as if the patriarch he spoke of had given him a lot of courage. The others also nodded subconsciously. The Kim family's patriarch, Kim Tian-shung, was an expert who stood at the peak of Korea. He was not someone like Jindo could compare to. This was also the reason why the Kim family was ranked first among the four great families. Even though that's the case, it's best if we don't provoke Mad Southern Yi. Jin Hongyu shook his head slightly and said in a deep voice, during this period of time, our Jin family will just wait and see. Just as he was speaking, the door to the room was pushed open heavily. Then, a handsome young man dressed in extremely fashionable clothes strode in. Grandpa, Mr. Dai and the others have arrived in Korea. Third bro, quickly go with Wenjie to receive them. Jin Hongyu's face lit up. Then, he looked at the young man and said, Wenjie, this time, Mr. Dai will definitely bring his daughter to Korea. I don't care what method you use. You must win his daughter's favor. Grandpa, don't worry, I know what to do. Kim Wenjie smiled proudly, his eyes revealing a confident look. Korea's Gyeonggu district, Hanseong. Yichun walked on the street with his hands behind his back, silently sizing up the streets of Korea. Whenever there was a blind spot, he would extend his divine consciousness to investigate one by one. That was because this street was the last place Qian had appeared. After giving the Park family the order, he also came here, wanting to find any clues related to Qian. However, after walking for more than an hour, he found nothing. If not for the photo of the dragon soul, he would have even doubted if Qian was really in Korea. When he walked out of the Seoul Hotel, he was greeted by a long motorcade of about 20 cars, all of which were Ferraris. There were even 2 police cars leading the way. The pedestrians around them retreated to the side, looking at the convoy approaching from afar in shock. There were many Koreans among them, but it was their first time seeing such a scene. The convoy stopped at the entrance of the hotel. A young man slowly walked out of a Ferrari. He was tall, handsome, and dressed extravagantly. It's him, young Master Kim Winji of the Kim family. The moment they saw the young man, someone subconsciously exclaimed. The others also sucked in a breath of cold air. Why is this crown prince here? And from the looks of it, he seems to be welcoming someone. Young Master Kim is so handsome. If he could even look at me, it would be worth it even if I died now. Countless women's eyes lit up, and they were infatuated. Faced with everyone's reaction, Kim Winja walked straight to a Ferrari and said with a gentle smile, "Uncle Dai, Miss Dai, we're here." "Thank you, nephew." An incomparably dignified voice came from the car. Then, the car door was opened by an old man in a tang suit. A middle-aged man in a brocade robe with a square face slowly walked out of the car. Behind him was a woman in a long dress. Her facial features were breathtakingly beautiful. However, the woman's brows were tightly furrowed. Kim Winja looked at the woman in front of him, and a spring breeze-like smile appeared on his face. "Shiyu, welcome to Korea. Dad, let's go in." Faced with his enthusiasm, Dai Shiyu was slightly impatient. She wrapped her arms around the middle-aged man's hand and was about to walk into the hotel. When she saw the crowd around them, her expression became even more impatient. However, at this moment, she was suddenly stunned. She looked at the ordinary young man in front of the crowd, 100 steps away from her in surprise. She was stunned at first. Then she quickly walked over and said in surprise, "Mr. Yi, why are you here in Korea?" Yi Chen was stunned. "Why are you here?" He did not expect to meet Dai Shiyu here. She was the one he had met on the ship when he first went to Hong Kong. Later on, the two of them had even slept in the same room. This sudden scene caused everyone to look over in unison. Even Kim Winjia and the middle-aged man were no exception. After realizing that the other party was just an ordinary-looking young man with ordinary clothes, the middle-aged man secretly frowned. The middle-aged man secretly frowned, but the smile on Kim Winjia's face froze, and a hint of malice flashed in his eyes. "I came with my dad. I didn't want to come, but my dad insisted on dragging me." Dai Shiyu pouted, feeling wronged. For some reason, every time she saw Yi Chun, she would feel extremely safe. This sense of security should have come from the time Yi Chun killed the Western Blood clan when they stayed in the same hotel. Therefore, she would inadvertently reveal her true personality. At this point, she could not help but turn around and introduce the middle-aged man behind her happily. "Dad, this is the Mr. Yi I mentioned to you before. Shiyu, come in with me." The middle-aged man's face darkened. Ever since his daughter returned home, she had been talking about how she had met a person called Mr. Yi in Hong Kong, including how the two of them had stayed in the same hotel room. This made Dai Tinglu a little angry. He valued his daughter more than anything else. How could he tolerate his daughter staying in the same room with a stranger of the opposite sex? After that, he had inquired about Yi Chen's whereabouts, but he could not find anything. Furthermore, his daughter had not been bullied, so he could only give up. "Dad," Dai Tinglu's coldness made Dai Shiyu feel wronged. "Come back. Mr. Yi, where do you live? I'll come and play with you later." Dai Shiyu could only look at Yi Chun pitifully. "No need. I'll be back soon." Yi Chun chuckled and turned around to leave. Dai Shiyu could only sigh in disappointment and return to Dai Tinglu's side listlessly. She was even more depressed than before. "Let's go." Dai Tinglu entered the hotel with a straight face. He secretly said to the old man beside him who had been with him for decades, "Old Wu, go and warn that kid to stay away from Shiyu in the future." Old Wu responded and was about to leave. "Wait, Dai Tinglu shook his head slightly and suddenly sighed softly. Just give him a small punishment. Don't hurt him. I don't want Shiyu to hate me for the rest of her life if she finds out. Chapter 497. As for Dai Shiyu, although this woman was the most outstanding woman he had ever seen in terms of appearance and temperament, Yichen did not have any thoughts about her. In his eyes, there was only Su Yuhan. This was also the reason why he had always kept a certain distance from all the women except Su Yuhan. Since he could not give them anything, why should he have any more thoughts? He walked along the pedestrian street of Kyugu and finally arrived at a lake on the outskirts of the city. He looked up at the lake with his hands behind his back and said without turning his head, "You've been following me all the way. Come out." A figure suddenly appeared in the bamboo forest 100 steps away. In the next moment, the figure appeared less than 10 steps away from Yi-chan like a ghost. It was an old man in a Chinese tunic suit. He was about 50 or 60 years old, and his left thumb was missing. At that moment, his face was filled with surprise. "You actually noticed that I was following you?" He thought that he had been careful enough along the way. He had completely concealed his aura, but he did not expect to be discovered by Yi-chan. Yi-chan shook his head slightly. "If I remember correctly, you're the person who sat in the same car as Dai Shiyu, right? You're surprising me more and more." The old man chuckled and said expressionlessly, "You can call me Old Wu. Young man, let me give you a piece of advice. Stay away from Shiyu. It's best if you don't appear in front of her again. I know what you're thinking. You saw that Shiyu's family is extraordinary, so you deliberately got close to her. You want to rise to the top in a single step." At this point, his gaze became slightly sinister. "However, I have to tell you that your thoughts are very dangerous. In this world, there are some people that you can't afford to reach." "I can't afford to reach?" Yichen could not help but laugh. Whether it was the cultivation world, the immortal world, or Earth, there was no woman that he could not reach. As long as he showed a trace of desire, many women would take the initiative to throw themselves at him. That's right. Old Wu thought that he did not believe him, so he snorted coldly and said, "Do you know who sent the convoy to welcome Shiyu? That's the Kim family, the leader of the 4 great families in Korea. The Kim family has been in business for hundreds of years and has always stood strong. Now, they have close to half of Korea's resources. 1/3 of the members of the parliament are related to the Kim family. The Jean family controls hundreds of billions of wealth. The Jean family." Yi-chan interrupted him when he saw that he was talking about it, as if he was familiar with it. "What does that have to do with me? I just want to tell you that even a colossus like the Jean family has to be polite to my Dai family." Elder Wu sneered. "The Jean family is already like this. What right do you, an ordinary person, have to have improper thoughts about Shiyu? I came here today to let you know the disparity between you and my young miss, so that you can dispel those dangerous thoughts as soon as possible. This is just your wishful thinking." Yichen said calmly, "Firstly, Dai Shiyu and I are just ordinary friends. We can't even be considered friends. No matter how beautiful she is or how shocking her background is, it's nothing in my eyes. Secondly, whatever you said, whether it's the Dai family's background or the Kim family's strength, in my opinion, it's just a matter of a single sword strike." "A single sword strike?" Old Wu could not help but sneer. "Young man, ignorance is a good thing, but sometimes if you use ignorance as a source of pride, it might bring you a fatal disaster. I'll give you one last chance. As long as you swear that you won't see Shiyu again, I'll let you go." As he said that, he glared at Yi-chan. Intentionally or unintentionally, he released a trace of martial Dao aura in an attempt to intimidate Yi-chan. However, Yi-chan smiled with his hands behind his back and said, "I, Yi-chan, have always done things as I please. Why should I be controlled by others?" "So, you're determined not to let Shiyu go?" Old Wu flew into a rage. "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." He was really angry in his heart. He had already spoken nicely to this extent, but the brat in front of him was still unmoved. Instead, he displayed a look of overflowing confidence. As soon as he finished speaking, Old Wu moved. At the same time, he grabbed Yi Chen's head with one hand. However, he did not use much strength. He just wanted to teach Yi Chun a little lesson. Get lost. A stern shout was heard, and a shocking aura erupted from Yi Chen's body. It was this aura that sent Old Wu flying on the spot. Blurg. Old Wu landed heavily on the ground. He felt the blood and energy in his body churn. Subsequently, he looked at Yi Chen in shock. Why you? He did not expect that the young man who looked ordinary to him earlier would suddenly erupt with such an aura. Martial Dao Master. Old Master had misjudged. This kid was actually a Martial Dao Master. On account of Dai Shiyu and the fact that you didn't have any killing intent towards me, I'll spare your life. If there's a next time, I'll definitely kill you. Yi Chen did not even look at him as he turned around and left. At the same time, in a hotel in Seoul, Dai Tinglu put down the phone in his hand, his eyes flickering nonstop. A Chinese powerhouse is charged into the Park family. The Park family seems to have submitted. To be able to suppress the Park family, this person must be a powerhouse in China. But who exactly is this person? He walked to the window and looked outside with his hands behind his back as he muttered to himself. At this moment, the door to the room was kicked open. Then, Daishi walked in and said angrily, "Dad, I want to go out to play." Play? Dai Tinglu's face darkened as he berated. "Is that all you know how to do all day? Didn't I tell you to interact more with Kim Wenjie? Where is he?" Dai Shiyu stomped her feet and said, "Dad, please let me go. I really don't like that guy. Every time he smiles at me, I think it's fake. Also, that face full of hyaluronic acid disgusts me. Even if you don't want to interact with him, you have to. This matter isn't up to you. The Dai family has decided to form an alliance with the Kim family. Your marriage with Kim Wenjie is the sincerity of both parties. Dad, why are you doing this? Are you using my happiness as a bargaining chip? Don't tell me you picked me up from the streets." Bastard. Dai Tinglu was so angry that his face turned ashen. "Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I'm warning you. Stay away from that Yi brat in the future. If I find out that you're in contact with him again, don't blame me for hurting him. You bastard, you can't bully me like that." Dai Shiyu burst into tears as she ran out of the room. She almost bumped into Old Wu, who was coming in from outside. "What did that brat say?" Dai Tinglu waved his hand with a dark expression, and the door closed automatically. Old Wu could not help but smile bitterly. Then he walked up to him and whispered a few words into his ear. "What?" Dai Tinglu could not help but be shocked. "Are you sure you didn't sense wrongly? Is that brat really a Martial Dao Master?" "I'm not very sure. However, even if he's not a Martial Dao Master, I believe he's not far from it." Old Wu shook his head slightly. No wonder this brat dared to come into contact with Shiyu. Dai Tinglu's expression changed a few times. Finally, he snorted coldly. "However, so what if you're a Martial Dao Master? A mere Martial Dao Master is still not worthy of my attention. As the #1 person in Shanghai, he could look down on any powerhouse below the martial venerable level." Chapter 498. Inside a presidential suite in a Seoul hotel. Bang! A tall glass was smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. B*TCH, shameless B*TCH. Kim Wenjie's expression was extremely gloomy as he looked at a young man in front of him and said, "I'm the young master of the Kim family after all. I took the initiative to express my goodwill to this B*TCH, but she didn't even spare me a glance. Instead, she was all kinds of intimate with other men. Young master, be careful with your words. Her father is the #1 person in Shanghai and China. Even the patriarch has to be respectful," the young man in front of him reminded. The words #1 person in Shanghai caused Kim Wenjie's expression to change. He regained some of his rationality and could only gasp for breath as he said, "Investigate this kid. Find out who he is to actually be favored by this B*TCH. There's no need to investigate." At this moment, a middle-aged man quickly walked in and said, "Wenjie, I've already investigated that kid. He's from China and is alone." At this point, the middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "Wenjie, your marriage with Dai Shiyu is related to the alliance between the Kim family and the Dai family. You know what to do. The family won't help you. You have to handle it yourself. It can be considered as letting Mr. Dai see your courage." "Dad, Does Grandpa know about this? The middle-aged man's face darkened. This is your own matter. Do you have the face to let them know? If they know, they will only be disappointed in you. Dad, I understand. Don't worry, I will personally kill that kid and then send his head to Dai Shiyu. Kim Wenjia sneered, his eyes flickering nonstop. In a mid-range villa in Korea, a young woman wearing a light yellow top and sunglasses went up to the 5th floor of a neighborhood in high-heeled shoes. Qian, I'm back. The woman walked to the door and took off her sunglasses, revealing an extremely exquisite facial features. A gentle smile appeared on her lips. The door was open from the inside, and a small head with a ponytail poked out. Sister Wanqing, you're back. A little girl about 4 or 5 years old quickly ran out. Yeah, big sister even bought delicious food for you. Qi Wanqing squatted down and hugged the little girl with one hand. She shook the plastic bag in her hand and smiled. Are you hungry? Sister Wanqing, Qian is not hungry. The little fellow hurriedly shook her head, but then a rumbling sound came from her stomach. Little fool. Qi Wanqing shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, she let her in and closed the door. She personally opened the plastic bag and took out a chicken wing and a hamburger. I've eaten on set. Hurry up and eat. I'll personally cook for you later. Thank you, Sister Wanqing. The little girl said politely, and then she began to eat the chicken wings and hamburger. She was obviously very hungry, but she ate very slowly. In the end, there was still half a hamburger left. Why aren't you eating? She didn't understand. The little fellow hesitated for a moment and said seriously, Qian wants to keep it for tomorrow, so that Sister Wanqing doesn't have to waste money buying it for Qian tomorrow. Qi Wanqing felt a lump in her throat when she heard that. She could not help but hug her tightly in her arms. It's okay. I'm a rich woman with an annual income of 20 million. I'm not afraid that you'll make me poor. In fact, she had nothing to do with the little fellow in front of her. She had picked him up from the roadside 2 days ago. The moment she saw the little fellow barefooted in the water, she was stunned. The moment she saw the little fellow fall into the water barefoot, she saw herself as a child. In the end, the little fellow still ate half of the hamburger. After Qi Wanqing helped her clean up, she wiped her mouth with a tissue and said, Didn't I give you money? Why don't you go out and buy food? Qian doesn't know the way, and her memory isn't good. I'm worried that she won't be able to find her way back if she goes out, the little fellow said weakly. At this point, she suddenly looked up at Qi Wanqing and said timidly, Sister, when are you sending Qian back? Didn't you say that you don't have a home? Qi Wanqing was surprised and a little disappointed. She was too lonely. Outsiders thought that she was beautiful, but they could not see the loneliness in her heart. Qian doesn't have a home. The little fellow tilted her head and said, But Qian told me before that there was a kind big brother and big sister who adopted Qian. Big brother has a younger sister at home, and they treat Qian very well. Qian suddenly disappeared. Big brother and big sister must be very sad, so Qian wants to tell them that she's safe. Do you have their phone number? No. Then do you know where they live? I don't remember. After a series of questions and answers, Qi Wanqing could only shake her head and say with a smile, How about this? You stay here first. After I finish filming, I'll take some time to bring you back to China. Okay? Okay. After saying that, she washed up, changed into a set of kitchen clothes, and walked into the kitchen to start cooking. At that moment, her phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was her manager, Sister Ling. Wanqing, you don't have anything important to do tonight, do you? No. Qi Wanqing subconsciously shook her head, then asked, Sister Ling, what's wrong? Is there a night scene in the production crew? No, it's like this. There's a banquet at the Shilla Hotel tonight at 8 o'clock. The organizer is the Park family. It's said that a big shot will be coming, and our company is under the Park family, so the company wants you to attend. Sister Ling stuttered as she spoke. Sister Ling, you know I don't like these things. Just as Qi Wanqing was about to say something, she was interrupted by Sister Ling. I know, but this is a rare opportunity for you. Do you understand? Moreover, the Park family has specifically asked a few of you to attend, including Chui Siyuan and the others. If you don't go, I'm afraid the company won't be able to accommodate you. Being frozen is considered light. Think about the 5-year contract you signed with the company. If you break the contract midway, you'll have to pay 5 times the penalty. Sister Ling, okay, I'll go. Qi Wanqing's face turned pale. She could only bite her lip and agree. After secretly wiping her tears, she quickly made a sandwich and walked to the living room. Sister Wanqing, are you crying? No. Qi Wanqing forced a smile and said, I have something to do tonight. Stay at home and don't run around. No matter who knocks on the door, don't open it. I'll bring you something delicious. Sister, don't worry. Park family. Park Haixin entered the door and said respectfully, Master, the Park family is holding a banquet at the Shilla Hotel tonight. At that time, many big shots from Korea will come. We'll use this banquet to get them to help Master find that little girl. Do you want to go? Yes, of course. Yichen agreed without hesitation. Korea was not big, but it was not small either. It would not be easy to find Qian with the power of the Park family, which had been severely injured by him. Since he had this opportunity now, naturally, he would not miss it. Chapter 499. That night at the Shilla Hotel. This was a 5-star hotel that belonged to the Samsung Group. The hotel had been rated as one of the top hotels in Korea many times, and it had even been selected as a member of the World Top Hotels Alliance, LHW, which selected more than 450 top hotels in the world. So far, it was the only hotel in Korea that had LHW membership. In other words, this hotel was the property of the Park family. In a large, luxurious room on the 23rd floor of the hotel, Yi Chun, dressed in light clothes, sat on the sofa and watched expressionlessly as the trained waiters served the dishes on the table. Seeing the various delicacies on the table, he could not help but think of Meng Meng. If he had brought her along on this trip, this little foodie would have been in luck. At this moment, Park Haixin, who was dressed in formal clothes, quickly walked in and said respectfully, Master, they're all here. Do you want to go over? There's no need for that. Just do what you should do. Yichen shook his head slightly. He did not like to join the fun. Besides, the banquet hall was downstairs. With his divine telekinesis, he could sense everyone's situation at any time. Okay. Park Haixin bowed and did not dare to ask further. She left the 2 waitresses behind and closed the door before walking out. In a dressing room on the 5th floor of the hotel, 3 shockingly beautiful women were sitting in front of the dressing table. Each of them had a professional makeup artist serving them. If there were outsiders present, they would be shocked to discover that these 3 women were famous female celebrities in Korea. They were the popular little diva Choi Soo-yun, the winner of the previous beauty pageant, Lee Meng-chi, and the pure rookie Qi Wanqing, who had 0 scandals in the Han entertainment industry. Qi Wanqing was wearing a white dress today. The tight-fitting clothes outlined her figure vividly. Coupled with her exquisite face, she looked like an incomparably holy angel that had descended. In an instant, she overshadowed the halos of Choi, Sun, and Lee Meng-chi beside her. However, at this moment, there was no joy on her pretty face. She sat in front of the mirror like a puppet, allowing the makeup artist to manipulate her. She looked up at herself in the mirror blankly. It was this face that gave her everything she had today. It was also because of this face that she had to face threats from all directions at any time. Sometimes, she hated herself for having such a face. Ever since her debut, she had always been very careful and cautious. She would avoid any non-official events as much as possible. But today, she knew that she could not avoid it. Thinking to this point, she gritted her teeth and turned to look at her manager, Sister Ling, who was standing at the door. Sister Ling, I'm not feeling well. Can I know? Sister Ling interrupted her without a second thought. Perhaps he felt that his tone was not very good, so he walked over and hugged her. He sighed softly and said, Wanqing, I've told you everything that needs to be said. There's no room for discussion today. Qi Wanqing lowered her head sadly. I say, some people are already here. Why are they still so reserved? At this moment, Choi Soo-in couldn't help but sneer. This is reality, not a movie. Please put away your innocent and pitiful act. The 3 of them were all from the same management company. Choi Soo-in was the first to enter the company. Relying on the company's resources, she had risen early. It was not an exaggeration to describe her as the #1 sister. However, with Qi Wanqing's addition, her halo was immediately overshadowed, and her status was declining day by day. How could she not be annoyed? Although they were national idols, that was only for ordinary people. In the eyes of real big shots, they were entertainers, commodities that could be consumed at any time. Therefore, when she heard that they were going to meet the big shot behind the Park family tonight, she agreed without thinking, as long as she could go up. So what if she had to sacrifice a little? Qi Wanqing's face turned pale when she heard that. Sister Ling, if Wanqing is really not feeling well, let her go back. It's not good to drag this on, Li Mengqi said, pretending to be kind. Wouldn't one less competitor mean one less competitor? Just as Sister Ling was about to speak, she saw a middle-aged woman in formal attire with an unusually powerful aura outside the dressing room. Director Park. Sister Ling hurriedly went up to greet her respectfully. Even Cui Suyuan and Li Mengqi were no exception. They immediately stood up, subconsciously. This was the daughter of the Park family's head, Park Haixin. She was also a director of the Samsung Corporation. Only Qi Wanqing was still sitting on the stool, unable to react. Park Haixin glanced at Qi Wanqing expressionlessly and then said to the three of them, I don't care if you're willing or not. You have to serve this big shot well tonight. I don't care how popular you are in Korea. If you offend that big shot, my Park family will consign you to eternal damnation. Do you understand? Yes. Cui Suyuan and Li Mengqi's hearts trembled slightly as they hurriedly nodded. However, they were curious about who that big shot was. Even the wealthy Park family had to be respectful to him. However, they were more pleasantly surprised. If they could befriend such a big shot, wouldn't that mean that they would have a bright future in Korea's entertainment industry? Follow my people up, Park Haixin said, and called someone to lead the three women straight to the 21st floor of the hotel. This was the Park family's arrangement. After all, the life and death of the Park family was completely in Yi Chen's hands. They did not know much about Yi Chen's preferences. However, as the saying went, heroes had a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. This was a time-tested strategy. At the entrance of the 21st floor of the Shilla Hotel, Yi Chen sat at the table, indifferent to the table full of delicacies. Instead, he enveloped the banquet hall downstairs with his divine consciousness. At this moment, there were many people dressed in gold and silver gathered downstairs. There were even many Korean celebrities who were popular in China present. From this, one could see the influence of the Park family in Korea. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. He raised his brows slightly and said, Come in. The next moment, two extremely sexily dressed women walked in. The leader was wearing a sexy, fiery red dress. Her shoulders were exposed, and her fair and tender skin was extremely enchanting under the light. The other revealed a deep V-shaped neckline. Her waist was slender, and she had a charming temperament. He was stunned. Another woman walked in from the door. However, she kept her head down and did not dare to look around. Even so, her figure wrapped in a white dress was extremely eye-catching. Yi Chan frowned. You are. He suspected that they had entered the wrong room. Hello, Mr. Yi. We've heard a lot about you, so we came to get to know you. Cui Sin, who was walking at the front, smiled faintly. Without waiting for Yi Chan to react, she twisted her slender waist and sat on his right. Li Mengqi, who was behind her, was unwilling to fall behind. She sat on Yi Chen's left, and the two of them squeezed Yi Chan in the middle. Qi Wanqing, on the other hand, stood at the door in a daze. Her slender fingers were tightly clasped together. Chapter 500. You've heard of my name for a long time? Yi Chan was a little stunned as he looked at the girls on his left and right. He even wanted to light a cigarette and think about who had leaked his identity. That's right. Cui Suyuan naturally hugged Yi Chen's arm. There was no awkwardness on her face at all. Instead, she said in broken Mandarin, My name is Cui Suyuan. I'm sure you've heard of me before, Mr. Yi. At that moment, she was charming and charming. She was like a mimosa that was ready to be plucked. She fully displayed the unique charm of a woman. She had been in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years. She had long known how to please a man without making it seem deliberate. She knew her limits very well. Seeing this scene, Li Mengqi cursed under her breath. Just as she wanted to follow suit, she heard Yi-chan shake his head slightly and say, "I've never heard of you." The smile on Chui Si-yuan's face froze. She was not the kind of person who was very popular in Korea's entertainment industry, but she believed that she had a certain level of appeal on the screen. Even if she randomly dragged a homeless man on the street, people would still know about the popular little celebrity, Chui Si-yuan. However, Yi-chan had never heard of her. Was this kid really a big shot? Could it be that it came from some corner of the world? Chui Si-yuan frowned without batting an eyelid. When she first heard that they were going to meet a big shot, she could not help but fantasize in her heart. A big shot that even the Park family had a curry favor with. Not to mention his appearance, at the very least, his aura should be strong enough. However, ever since she came in, Yi-chan had really disappointed her. While she was in a daze, Li Mengqi intentionally or unintentionally moved closer to Yi-chan. She said in an extremely soft voice, "Mr. Yi, my name is Li Mengqi. You can call me Chi-Chi." Among the three of them, she was the last to join the management company. Moreover, she had made her debut in a beauty contest. Her background and connections were relatively poor, so she did not have many restrictions. It had to be said that the two women were the best in terms of looks and figures. In addition, they were both in their late 20s, which was the most attractive period for a woman. In addition, the fragrance emitted by the two women made even Yi-chan feel a little restless. No matter what, he was a man, a normal man. However, his Tao heart was firm, so he forcefully suppressed this thought. Then, he looked up at Qi Wanqing, who was standing at the door. "This is Mr. Yi. She's Qi Wanqing. She's our colleague." Seeing that Yi-chan was paying attention to Qi Wanqing, Chui Si-yuan still introduced her, even though she was not very happy. Then, she looked at Qi Wanqing with a straight face and said, "Wanqing, what are you doing? Hurry up and greet Mr. Yi." As soon as he said that, Qi Wanqing, who was standing at the door, trembled slightly. She hesitated for a moment before finally mustering her courage to walk over and find a seat to sit down. However, she was far away from Yi-chan. When Chui Si-yuan and Li Mengqi saw this scene, the two girls could not help but smile. In their opinion, it was impossible for Qi Wanqing to win Yi-chan's favor with her performance tonight. Yi-chan, on the other hand, was slightly interested in Qi Wanqing. He looked at her with a faint smile. "You seem to be very afraid of me." And no, Qi Wanqing's heart trembled as she quickly shook her head. "You're Chinese?" Yi-chan was a little surprised. Among the three girls, only Qi Wanqing's Mandarin was the most standard. As for Chui Si-yuan and Li Mengqi, they were not very fluent. Some of their words were even out of tune. "Yes." Qi Wanqing finally raised her head and looked at him. Her pretty face was very surprised. "You're also Chinese?" At the same time, Chui Si-yuan and Li Mengqi's expressions changed slightly. Obviously, they did not expect this to happen. The two of them stuck closer to Yi-chan's body. "That's right." Yi-chan nodded slightly. When he realized that the two girls' behavior was getting more and more outrageous, he could not help but frown. "All right, both of you can leave." He came to Korea to look for someone, not to play with female celebrities. If his family found out, they would probably make him kneel on a durian. The reason why he said so much to them was because he was a little bored in the private room alone. As soon as he finished speaking, Chui Si-yuan and Li Mengqi immediately became nervous. "Mr. Yi, get out." Yi-chan repeated himself and said slowly, "I know that you were all arranged by the Park family, but I don't need this. If they blame you, just say that I said it." He did not deny that the two girls were very beautiful. If it had been 5 years ago, he would have been unable to resist sleeping with them. However, after experiencing thousands of years in the cultivation world, he had already seen countless peerless geniuses and goddesses. What were two mere mortal girls to him? Although Chui Si-yuan and Li Mengqi were extremely unwilling, seeing that Yi-chan had already said so much, they finally stood up and walked towards the door. Qi Wanqing also stood up. Yi-chan suddenly looked at her. "You stay." Qi Wanqing's body immediately trembled violently. She seemed to have recalled something, and her pretty face instantly turned pale. Chui Siyuan and Li Mengqi, who had walked to the door, stopped in their tracks. They looked at each other and saw the strong hostility in each other's eyes. They had competed for so long, but they did not expect that Qi Wanqing would benefit in the end. Moreover, among the three girls, Qi Wanqing's performance was the worst. Bang! The door was slammed shut. Yichen chuckled at Qi Wanqing. Sit over here. Plop. Qi Wanqing suddenly knelt on the ground. She bit her lip and cried, Mr. Yi, please let me go. On account that we're all Chinese, please let me go. She thought that Yichen did not like Chui Siyuan and Li Mengqi, but her. He even asked her to stay for the night. What are you thinking? Yichen shook his head slightly. I admit that you're very beautiful, but the two who went out just now are not much worse than you. If I were that kind of person, why would I chase them out? At this point, he added, I think that we're all Chinese, and you're living in Korea, so I want to have a chat with you. Besides, I'm someone with a family. Someone with a family. When Qi Wanqing heard that, she raised her head and looked at Yi Chun in disbelief. In the end, she stood up and slowly walked to Yi Chun and sat down, revealing a pitiful and charming face. At the same time, on the 20th floor of the Shilla Hotel. At this moment, everyone at the banquet was present. Even the four wealthy families of Korea were present. Park Hae-shin changed her attire and walked into the banquet hall. She first made an opening speech before going straight to the point. Everyone, I've invited everyone here today to reminisce about the past. The main reason is that the Park family would like to ask everyone to help us find someone. Chapter 501. On the 20th floor of the Shilla Hotel. As Park Hae-shin finished speaking, everyone in the banquet hall was stunned. Everyone in the banquet hall was taken aback. An elegant middle-aged man dressed in an incomparably gentlemanly manner stood up and said, Mr. Park, I wonder what kind of person the Park family is paying so much attention to. At this point, he smiled again. Of course, I will definitely do my best to find this person for you, Director Park. Although the other party looked like a gentleman, he was the leader of the largest gang in Korea, nameless Zhao. He had thousands of members under him. It could be said that no matter what happened on the streets of Korea, nothing could hide from him. Hearing this, everyone could not help but look at Park Hae-shin. They were secretly curious about who the Park family was looking for. Park Hae-shin scanned the crowd and then took out a photo of Qianqian. She slowly said, The Park family is looking for a little girl. She's the one in the photo. Her name is Qianqian. She's 4 or 5 years old. She's from China. 3 days ago, she appeared on the streets of Girogu. A little girl from China? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. They had thought that Park Hae-shin was looking for someone from the Park family or someone who had offended the Park family. They did not expect it to be a child. Director Park, what's your relationship with this little girl? An old man wearing a brocade robe and black-rimmed glasses stood up. His eyes flickered nonstop. If one took a closer look, they would discover a trace of shock in the depths of his eyes. But more than that, there was ecstasy in them. Professor Liu, this little girl is a member of my Park family. She lived in China in her early years. Park Hae-shin said expressionlessly. This was the excuse she had prepared long ago. At this point, she added, Everyone, this matter is very important to my Park family. Please help me. After this matter is completed, my Park family is willing to pay $1 billion as a reward. The moment these words were said, the entire venue was in an uproar. $1 billion. If it was converted to Korean won, it would be $1 trillion. At the same time, on the 21st floor of the Shilla Hotel, Yi Chun chewed slowly on the dishes on the table, while using his divine consciousness to envelop the banquet hall downstairs. When he saw that Park Hae-shin had offered a $1 billion reward to find Qianqian, he nodded to himself. Qi Wanqing sat next to Yi Chun at a close distance. Her head was buried very low, and from time to time, she would secretly look up at Yi Chun. It had been about half an hour since she came in. Yi Chun did not do anything rude during that period. Even when he looked at her occasionally, there was no lust in his eyes at all. It was as if he really had no intention to do anything to her. Her tense heart gradually calmed down, and she could not help but muster the courage to ask, Mr. Yi, are you really Chinese? Of course, I'm from Qianan. Yi Chun smiled lightly and asked, What about you? Upon hearing this, Qi Wanqing finally believed that he was Chinese. She could not help but smile and say, I'm from Guangdong province, but I haven't returned to my hometown for nearly 20 years. Why? Yichen could not help but look at her. Qi Wanqing pursed her red lips and changed the topic. Then what kind of business does Misty do in Korea? She had lived in Korea for nearly 20 years, but this was the first time she had seen Yichun. Logically speaking, since Yichun was a big shot, she should have heard of him more or less as a person in the entertainment industry. I'm not doing business in Korea. Yichun chuckled softly and shook his head. Actually, this is my first time in Korea. If it weren't for the fact that I'm looking for someone, I might not have come. Looking for someone? Qi Wanqing's pretty face froze. She could not help but ask, May I know who Mr. Yi is looking for? After saying this, she seemed to feel that she had asked too many questions. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, If Mr. Yi is unwilling to tell me, it's fine. Yichen thought for a moment, then took out his phone and took out Qianqian's photo. He placed it in front of her and said with a smile, I'm looking for this little girl in the photo. Qi Wanqing could not help but look over. Then he was completely stunned. 20th floor of the hotel. Park Haishin's $1 billion bounty had completely shocked many people present. For a moment, many people asked Park Haishin for a photo and patted their chests, promising that they would do their best to find her. However, there were people who did not like the $1 billion. At this moment, a handsome young man in a suit stood up and looked at Park Haishin. Director Park, Wenjia has something to ask you. As his voice fell, everyone could not help but look at him. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar. It's young Master Kim from the Kim family. I didn't expect him to come to this banquet. It's not surprising that he's here. After all, Director Park's son, Han Zimming, used to have a good relationship with young Master Kim. Facing Kim Wenjia's words, Park Haishin nodded slightly. Please ask. Kim Wenjia walked out of the crowd and asked cynically, I heard that a powerhouse from China killed his way into your Park family yesterday. I wonder if it's true? As soon as these words were said, everyone's expressions froze. They could not help but look at Park Haishin. They had also heard the news of the chaos in the Park family, but they could not believe it. After all, the Park family was a wealthy family in Korea. Meeting everyone's gaze, Park Haishin's expression changed slightly. Then, she nodded and said, That's right, there was indeed such a thing. Her confession shocked everyone. Rumor has it that this powerhouse is the #1 person in China, Mad Southern Yi. I wonder if it's true? Kim Wenjia revealed an expression as if he had expected it. No. Park Haishin immediately shook her head and said, It's not Mad Southern Yi, but the expert beside my husband, Han Dongsheng Fu Wanlong. This person tried to help my husband seize power, so he killed his way into my Park family. However, he was killed by Master Jindo. Fu Wanlong. Hearing this name, everyone was slightly taken aback. However, someone seemed to have thought of something and subconsciously asked, Is it the Uncle Long beside President Han? That's right. Park Haishin nodded. That person nodded repeatedly. Rumor has it that Fu Wanlong was considered a powerhouse in China decades ago. After he was subdued by President Han, he only listened to his orders. In that case, this matter can't be wrong. Kim Wenjia immediately revealed a look of realization. In fact, they also knew that Han Dongsheng and Park Haishin were on bad terms. With an expert like Fu Wanlong helping Han Dongsheng, it could be explained why he wanted to seize power. All right, everyone, it's settled. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. After a round of toasting, Park Haishin left in a hurry after saying this. After she left, the others felt that it was meaningless to continue staying, so they left one after another. Even Kim Wenjia was no exception. When he walked into the elevator, he unexpectedly discovered 2 women. He could not help but ask, Why are you here? It was Chui Siyuan and Li Mengqi. Young Master Kim. Chui Siyuan and Li Mengqi were shocked at first, but then they greeted him respectfully and said, Young Master Kim, we just came down from upstairs and are about to go back. Upstairs? Kim Wenjia looked up at the ceiling, his face full of disbelief. Do you think you deserve to be on the 21st floor of the Shilla Hotel? The Shilla Hotel had a total of 21 floors. The 21st floor had never been open to the public, except for the direct descendants of the Park family. We were invited by the Park family to meet a big shot on the 21st floor. Choi Soo-in did not dare to hesitate and told him everything. At the end of her sentence, she added, "Oh right, Chi Wanqing is also up there." Chi Wanqing? Kim Wenji's expression immediately changed. He, the young master of the Kim family, relied on his illustrious family background. Although he played with countless women, he had hit a wall with Chi Wanqing. No matter if he threatened or tempted, this woman was not tempted. Who would have thought that she would actually appear to accompany someone? Yes, that important person chased us out and left Wanqing alone up there. Li Mengqi echoed, but there was a hint of schadenfreude between her brows. At first, the two of them were unhappy that Yi Chun had chased them out. However, after seeing Kim Wenjie, their resentment disappeared. This was because they knew about Kim Wenjie and Chi Wanqing. It could be said that Kim Wenjie completely treated Chi Wanqing as his exclusive property, and no one was allowed to touch her. "Bring me up." Kim Wenjie's expression completely darkened. He could not help but sneer. "I want to see what kind of big shot dares to touch the woman I like." Chapter 502. On the 21st floor of the Shilla Hotel. The moment she saw the photo of the little girl on Yi Chen's phone, Chi Wanqing's heart trembled violently. Qianqian. It was Qianqian's photo. Although she had only spent a few days with that little girl, she was sure that the little girl in the photo was Qianqian, because they looked too alike. Not only did they look exactly the same, even the childish smile on the little girl's lips seemed to be carved from the same mold. Sensing her abnormality, Yichen raised his brows and could not help but ask, "What's wrong with you? Have you seen her before?" "No," Chi Wanqing blurted out subconsciously. She hurriedly shook her head and said, "I've never seen her before. I just think that this little girl is too cute." That was what she said, but her heart was in a mess, like a pot of porridge. Why did Mr. Yi have Qianqian's photo? What was her relationship with Qianqian? Was Mr. Yi a good person or a bad person? Thinking to this point, she bit her red lips and looked up at Yi Chun. She asked intentionally or unintentionally, "Mr. Yi, what's your relationship with this little girl?" Yi Chun was about to speak when he suddenly looked in the direction of the door. He frowned immediately. Bang! With a loud bang, the door of the room was kicked open from the outside. Following that, a young man in a suit strode in. The young man's expression was extremely gloomy. This sudden scene immediately frightened Chi Wanqing. When she saw the other party's appearance clearly, she could not help but stand up and exclaim, "Young Master Kim?" Chi Wanqing, not bad. Kim Wenjie's expression was extremely ugly. His gaze landed on Chi Wanqing first. "I think I've been very kind to you. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you're being intimate with another man here." "No, young Master Kim, it's not what you think." Chi Wanqing's heart trembled, and she subconsciously wanted to explain. "Get lost. I want to see what kind of big shot dares to touch the woman I like." Kim Wenjie waved his hand, and a strong force erupted from his body, immediately throwing Chi Wanqing to the side. "Why is it you?" When he saw that it was Yi Chun, he was shocked. Before this, he thought that the big shot that Choi Soo-in and the others were talking about was some wealthy family or big shot in Korea. He did not expect it to be Yi Chun, whom he had always wanted to kill. "Why? Are you surprised that it's me?" Yi Chun picked up a bottle of red wine on the table and poured it into his glass. "Yeah, very surprising." Jean Wenjie smiled coldly. "Boy, you were flirting with that bitch Dai Shiyu during the day. I want to kill you. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, I would see you flirting with a woman I like." In the words of you Chinese people, this is what it means to wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. "Young Master Jean," Chi Wanqing suddenly knelt in front of him and begged. "Young Master Jean, it's not what you think. There's nothing between me and Mr. Yi." She turned her head and said to Yi Chun at the end of her sentence, "Mr. Yi, hurry up and explain to Master Jean. Otherwise, he'll kill you." As for Kim Wenjie, it would not be an exaggeration to describe him as the crown prince of Hanqing City. Although she did not know Yi Chen's identity, an outsider like him would definitely not be Kim Wenjie's match. B*TCH get lost. I'll deal with you after I'm done with this brat. Kim Wenjie pushed her away directly and walked to Yi Chun with an extremely grim expression. Brat, I'll give you a chance now. As long as you kneel in front of me, I might consider leaving your corpse intact. Otherwise, I'll chop off your head and give it to that bitch Dai Shiyu. What do you think will happen if she sees it? Are you done? Yi Chun was still sitting as usual. He took a sip of red wine and raised his head to look at him calmly. You're courting death. Kim Wenjie flew into a rage and threw a punch at Yi Chun's head. He had changed his mind now. He wanted to blow Yi Chun's head up with one punch. Young Master Jean, no. Qi Wanqing pleaded desperately, her face filled with despair. At the next moment, when Kim Wenjie's fist was about to touch Yi Chun, he suddenly felt that he could not move. It was as if he had been immobilized. His scalp went numb as he looked at Yi Chun in fear. Who exactly are you? At this moment, he finally realized something. The brat in front of him was a powerhouse. A powerhouse like the patriarch. Qi Wanqing was also dumbfounded. Didn't you investigate my identity when you want to kill me? Yi Chun put down his wine glass slowly and looked at him expressionlessly. His eyes were filled with pity. Haven't you ever thought about why I'm sitting in the private room on the 21st floor? Who are you? Kim Wenjie felt a bolt out of the blue flash through his mind. Then, he widened his eyes and looked at Yi Chun in shock. Mad Southern Yi. The China #1. Mad Southern Yi. Damn it, the Park family lied to me. The one who killed into the Park family wasn't some bullsh** T. Fu Wanlong. It was clearly the China #1. Mad Southern Yi. Thinking to this point, his heart was filled with fear. He subconsciously said, Spare me, spare me. I didn't know you were. It's too late. Those who obey me will live, and those who oppose me will die. Yi Chun shook his head lightly. Subsequently, he flicked his finger and a cyclone pierced through his glabella. Bang! A cold corpse fell heavily to the ground. His eyes were wide open. It was as if he had died with a grievance. Qi Wanqing could not help but scream when she saw this. She curled up into a ball and shivered. Her eyes were filled with fear when she looked at Yi Chun. At the same time, a black cyclone shot out from Kim Wenjie's corpse and subsequently hit Yi Chun. The black cyclone turned into a black mark and froze on Yi Chun's body. A spiritual imprint? Yi Chun squinted slightly in slight surprise. In a dojo 100 kilometers away, an old man in a Taoist robe was lying in a coffin. The old man was extremely old, and his skin was wrinkled like a withered tree bark. His body was filled with death energy, and he looked like a dead man. This person was the patriarch of the Kim family, Kim Tiansheng, a hidden powerhouse who stood at the peak of Korea. The Kim family was founded by him for more than 100 years. When her lifespan was about to end, she used the embryonic breathing technique to let herself fall into a deep sleep to reduce the loss of her life force. At this moment, the old man suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was filled with resentment, and an incomparably shrill and furious roar resounded in the surroundings. You killed my grandson and destroyed my cauldron. This old man will not rest until you die. Boom! The coffin shattered into a few pieces, and Kim Tiansheng floated up from the ground. The aura on his body suddenly erupted, and he turned into a black cloud that flew towards the sky. He had accidentally obtained a secret technique that could allow him to possess another person's body and be reborn, changing into a young body. Moreover, the target of the possession could only be a blood relative. This way, the success rate would be higher. And Kim Wenjie was the cauldron that he had been nurturing. The entire Kim family did not know. Now that it was the night of the full moon, he would be able to possess Kim Wenjie. He did not expect Kim Wenjie to actually die. This was equivalent to destroying his hope of continuing to live. How could he not be enraged? P.S. Chapter 2. There's still one more chapter. Chapter 503. Master, you killed Kim Wenjie? When Park Hai-shin came to the room and saw Kim Wenjie's corpse on the ground, her expression suddenly changed. Yi Chun lowered his head and looked at the black line on his wrist. He said in a deep voice, Who am I going to kill? Do I need to report to you? No. Under Chi Wanqing's shocked gaze, Park Haishin knelt heavily on the ground and explained, Master, you might not know this, but Kim Wenjie is the young master of the Kim family. He is deeply favored by the patriarch of the Kim family, Kim Tiansheng. Now that you've killed him, I'm afraid Kim Tiansheng won't let this matter rest. Kim Tiansheng? Yichen looked up at her. Park Haishin hurriedly nodded and said, That's right. Kim Tiansheng is the patriarch of the Kim family. A century ago, he dominated Korea. Although he has been living in seclusion all these years, no one dares to provoke the Kim family. To put it bluntly, this person can cause an earthquake in the entire Korea with just a stomp of his foot. Just as she was speaking, the black line on Yi Chen's wrist grew larger. From afar, it looked like a tattoo. He could not help but look up at the sky. You came pretty fast. Master, this is a curse. Kim Tiansheng's curse on you must have been placed on Kim Wenjie in advance. After you killed him, it was transferred to you. He can sense the location of the curse and come looking for you. Park Haishin was terrified. She never expected that not only would Yi Chun suppress the Park family, but he would also kill Kim Wenjie. If that was the case, he would definitely suffer the revenge of the Kim family and the wrath of Kim Tiansheng. Then the Park family would also be in trouble. Stay here. I'll go do something. I'll be back soon. Yi Chen turned around and looked at Chi Wanqing. Chi Wanqing asked subconsciously, What is it? I'm going to kill Kim Tiansheng. Yi Chen said coldly and walked out in the next second. What? Kill Kim Tiansheng. Park Haishin was so shocked that she almost fainted. That was the most ancient powerhouse in Korea. He was not someone like Master Jindo could compare to. He actually ran towards Debongsa Mountain. The night was as dark as ink. In the sky above Korea, Kim Tiansheng, who was wrapped in a black robe, swept past like a tornado. The pressure and killing intent on his body were completely exposed to the entire world. Hateful, hateful. I don't care who you are. How dare you kill my clansmen and destroy my 20 years of hard work? I, Kim Tiansheng, swear to the heavens that after I capture you, I will definitely extract your soul and refine it. I will make you beg for death. Meanwhile, when his pressure and aura were exposed, a few ancient existences in various parts of Han City opened their eyes at the same time and looked at the sky in shock. Who could have such a powerful aura? In a villa, an old man suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. His turbid eyes erupted with a bright light. He believed that he was already the strongest person in Korea, but the aura in the sky was actually on par with him. In another temple, an old woman gazed at the sky, her eyes flickering. It's old Devil Jean. Didn't that old fart go into hibernation because his lifespan was about to end? Why is there such a strong killing intent? Inside the Seoul Hotel, Dai Shiyu, who was wearing a pink nightgown, pouted and looked at Dai Tinglu. Dad, I'm really too bored. Can you let me go out to play tomorrow? Don't think that I don't know that you want to look for that, you brat. Dai Tinglu's face darkened as he rejected her without hesitation. Dai Shiyu stomped her feet angrily and said, Dad, Mr. Yi is much better than Kim Wenjie. I don't understand why you don't like Mr. Yi. Silly girl. Dai Tinglu wanted to reprimand her, but his heart softened. The reason why I'm doing this is purely for your future. I only have you as my daughter. I can still protect you. If I die, who can you rely on? That's why I chose to marry the Kim family. The Kim family has stood tall in Korea for 100 years and has a deep foundation. Before he could finish, Dai Shiyu interrupted him. I don't care. Anyway, I don't like Kim Wenjie. Other than him, anyone else is fine. Then what do you think of Mad Southern Yi? Dai Tinglu chuckled. What? Mad Southern Yi? Dai Shiyu was stunned. That's right. Dai Tinglu took a deep breath and said, Rumor has it that Mad Southern Yi is only 30 years old. Not only did he surpass me at such a young age, he even became the #1 person in China. It's not an exaggeration to say that his talent is monstrous. At this point, he sighed softly and said, If you could attract the attention of such a person, why would I choose to marry the Kim family? However, that's obviously impossible. A person like Mad Southern Yi would definitely not be greedy for beauty. So what? Dai Shiyu snorted coldly. Not to mention that he's the #1 person in China. Even if he's the #1 person in the world or the #1 person in the universe, doesn't like him. Dai Tingla's expression darkened. Just as he was about to scold her, his expression suddenly changed. Then, he moved and appeared on the rooftop of the hotel. What a strong, killing intent. It's Kim Tiansheng. He raised his eyes to look at the sky. He could vaguely see a ball of black gas quickly flying over. What is Kim Tiansheng doing? Who could make him lose his composure like this? Master, should we go over and take a look? Old Wu had appeared behind him at some point in time. Dai Tinglu was silent for a few seconds, then shook his head and said, "No, the current situation is unclear. It's better to avoid trouble. I wonder how many people are watching me from behind the scenes." Most importantly, he was worried about leaving his daughter in the hotel. Such a scene had appeared more than once in various parts of Korea. Everyone was shocked by Kim Tiansheng in the sky. However, unexpectedly, no one followed him. Dabongsan Mountain, located in the center of Seoul. Yichun was dressed in green. He stood on the cliff step by step with his hands behind his back. The cold night wind fluttered his clothes, and golden flames flickered in his eyes. Not long after, a streak of black energy flew over from the sky. The black energy stopped less than 30 meters away from him and turned into an old man in a black robe with an extremely old face. "Why don't you keep running?" The old man was like a ghost that had returned from hell. He stared at Yi Chun with hatred in his eyes, and the murderous aura on his body was monstrous. Yi Chun raised his head slowly in the face of his words. His eyes were burning with fire. "The Kim family's patriarch, Kim Tiansheng, I've been waiting for you for a long time." A Chinese, Kim Tiansheng's expression froze at first. Then he said coldly, "No wonder you dared to kill my grandson and destroy my cauldron. I will extract your soul and refine it to vent the hatred in my heart. Remember, the person who killed you is Kim Tiansheng. If you want to fight, then fight. There's no need to talk nonsense." Yichun took a step forward and landed in the air. With a bang, the entire ground seemed to tremble violently, as if it could not endure his pressure. The battle between the two of them erupted. The powerhouses who had been shocked by Kim Tiansheng's aura all looked at Dabongsan Mountain. They could sense the might of the battle coming from Dabongsan Mountain. Dai Tinglu stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back, his gaze uncertain. Who exactly is it to be able to make Kim Tiansheng take action personally? For this person to be able to unleash such power when fighting Kim Tiansheng, his strength is definitely not inferior to mine. His expression kept changing. At the same time, the Kim family, a servant who was guarding the ancestral temple, rushed into the Kim family's conference hall in a panic. He knelt on the ground with a thud and stammered, "Patriarch, Patriarch, Patriarch has come out of closed-door cultivation and he's fighting someone on Dabongsan Mountain right now." "What?" The Kim family's patriarch, Jin Hongyu, was shocked. He looked at the upper echelons of the Kim family around him and suddenly reacted, let's go and see what's going on." Chapter 504. Boom! As Yi Chun took a step forward, he shot toward Kim Tiansheng like an arrow, bringing with him an extremely loud sound barrier. At the same time, with a casual wave of his hand, an invisible force shot out from his hand. It turned into a golden saber gleam in the air, bringing with it a whistling wind as it slashed at Kim Tiansheng, who was 100 steps away. The legendary Qi condensation weapon of China. Kim Tiansheng's expression changed. Like a ghost, he dodged the golden saber gleam in an instant. Boom! The golden saber gleam directly stood on the cliffs on all sides. With a loud bang, a deep crack appeared on the extremely hard rock wall, and countless gravel fell to the ground. Kim Tiansheng's pupils constricted slightly when he saw that. His eyes flickered as he looked at Yi Chun. "So you're a martial Dao master from China. No wonder you can kill my grandson. However, so what if you're a martial Dao master? Today, this will be your burial ground." He snorted coldly, and the black robe on his body suddenly fluttered as if there was a blower blowing nonstop. At the next moment, The black robe emitted a dazzling green glow, and faces filled with resentment appeared on it. These faces were twisted and could not stop baring their teeth at Yichun. Yichun frowned. Corpse clothes? Not bad. You're quite knowledgeable. It's a corpse. Kim Tiansheng smirked coldly. This old man has killed 81 virgins over the past few decades. Then, I skinned them and refined them into clothes. I've also soaked them in a special medicinal liquid. It can be said that they're impervious to swords and spears, and impervious to fire and water. Chinese man, your blade can't kill me. At this point, his face was filled with pride. On the contrary, I can twist your head off to vent the hatred in my heart. Is that so? Yichun shook his head lightly. He took a step forward and slashed again. Then try taking another slash for me. Shocking news. There's a battle between two powerhouses on Mount Debongsan in our country. Oh my God, is that true? It's absolutely true. Now the Daobong Mountain is going crazy. Many big shots have rushed over to watch the battle between the two powerhouses. Not only that, even people from the 9 great Taekwondo dojos went there, such as the Righteous Dojo, Qingtao Dojo, Jita Dojo, Pine Dojo, and Zhang Dojo. Let's go and take a look. There were experts fighting on the Dao Mountain. That night, the entire Korean city was shaken. Everyone was shocked by this news. It had to be known that such a scene had never happened in Korea in the past 50 years. That night, countless experts paid close attention to this battle. This news even spread to China, and it immediately attracted the attention of many people on Chinese forums. Everyone, I heard that Korea has also started fighting. It seems to be quite intense. What do you think? Nonsense, of course it's with my eyes. It's true, and it's on Dabongshan Mountain. My cousin in Korea happens to be outside Dabongshan Mountain. That's strange. The people of Korea only know how to talk and don't dare to make a move. Why are they acting differently tonight? Could it be that mad Southern Yi has killed his way into Korea? Holy sh*t, brother, your guess is really possible. After all, the people of Korea were clamoring on the internet and provoking mad Southern Yi. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to hold it in. If it's really that malefic mad Southern Yi, then he's too awesome, right? He's going to suppress an entire country by himself. For a moment, countless martial artists and ordinary people from Korea surged toward Dabongshan Mountain in the center of Seoul like a tide. The scene could be said to be full of people, as if they were attending a concert. However, to their disappointment, all the entrances to Dabongshan Mountain had been sealed. Moreover, the people who sealed it were from the Kim family. No one could go deep into Dabongshan Mountain. Everyone could only listen to the sounds of battle coming from afar. Even so, the intense rumbling in Dabongshan Mountain still caused their expressions to change. If one looked carefully, they would discover that Chun Feng and Lin Yinhua were among them. Sensing the surging flames coming from afar, Chun Feng sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Who exactly is fighting inside to be able to create such power?" Ever since the two of them parted ways with Yi Chun at the airport, they had joined the Wuda Taekwondo dojo. He was planning to bring Lin Yinhua to have supper after class when he heard the news of a battle between experts. He felt that Taekwondo was the most powerful fighting technique in the world. However, he realized that his knowledge of this world was too shallow. Lin Yinhua's face turned pale. She was also shocked. She could not understand how a person could be so powerful. Most people shook their heads in the face of his question. At this moment, an old man in a tang suit took a deep look at the Kim family members guarding the door and said, "The entire Kim family has moved out. If I'm not wrong, the person fighting inside must be the Kim family's patriarch." What? The Kim family's patriarch? Another old man was shocked and subconsciously blurted out, "Senior Han, may I ask if you are the Kim Tiansheng who dominated Korea 50 years ago?" "That's right, it's him." The old man, surnamed Han's expression was extremely solemn. As the sound of his voice faded, many people present sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces were filled with shock. They couldn't be more familiar with the name Jean Tiansheng. They didn't expect him to still be alive. "Old Han, may I ask who is fighting with the Kim family's patriarch?" Chun Feng, who was at the side, was a loss. He was not from Korea, So he did not know any of this. Then I don't know. The old man, surnamed Han, shook his head slightly, then said, however, to be able to fight with the Kim family's patriarch, this person must be an expert of this era. Chun Feng raised his head and looked at Dabongsa Mountain. He muttered to himself, if I can meet such a person, it's worth dying. On Dabongsa Mountain, more than 10 people raised their heads and stared at the two people fighting in the sky. However, because it was nighttime, they could not see the situation clearly. The Kim family's patriarch, Kim Hong-yu's face was ashen. He shouted coldly, what's going on with the satellite division? Haven't they settled it after so long? Patriarch, the satellite division said that the patriarch's speed is too fast. The radar can't catch them at all. Moreover, the magnetic field around their battle is very chaotic, and the interference is too great. A member of the Kim family who was in charge of communication said, while trembling with fear, a bunch of good-for-nothings. Kim Hong-yu snorted coldly. At this moment, a person beside him hung up the phone and said to him, Big brother, there are a lot of people gathered outside. Should we chase them away? Chase what? Kim Hong-yu sneered, and a fierce glint flashed in his eyes. The patriarch has been in hiding for decades. These people think that the patriarch is dead. Now, we can use this opportunity to intimidate some people with ulterior motives. Patriarch is right. After the patriarch kills that person, our Kim family will definitely be even more famous in Korea. The others nodded one after another, their faces full of confidence. Chapter 505. The night was as dark as ink, and on the pitch-black Daofeng Mountain, Yichen stood proudly in the air. His green robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes flickered with golden flames. He stood in the wind like a god. As he slashed out with his saber, the saber gleam instantly expanded to 3 meters. The wanton saber chi directly cut through the air within a radius of several hundred meters, producing an ear-piercing sound. The 3-meter saber gleam slashed at Kim Tiansheng in the distance. Sensing that this saber strike was even more powerful than before, Kim Tiansheng's expression froze. The black robe on his body seemed to have turned into a large umbrella that protected him. Boom! The saber slashed at the black robe in the blink of an eye, and the force that erupted caused Kim Tiansheng to retreat dozens of steps. So powerful. Kim Tiansheng's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Yi Chun to be so good at using sabers at such a young age, and his inner energy was so deep. If it was anyone else, that slash would have consumed a lot of inner energy. At most, they would only be able to slash once. I told you, your saber can't cut me. He lowered his head and could not help but laugh when he realized that his black robe was still undamaged. Yichen did not say anything. Instead, he clawed at the air, and another golden saber gleam erupted from his hand. As the saber gleam appeared, the surrounding air became violent. Kim Tiansheng felt his eyes blur. The sound of the saber broke through the layers of wind, and the sound of the saber could no longer be heard on the plains. The saber gleam broke through the blue sky, and only the heavy saber gleam could be seen between the heavens and the earth. Not good. His heart skipped a beat, and an incomparably bone-piercing chill assaulted his heart. He let out an angry roar, and the black robe suddenly expanded several times. It was like a black curtain that supported the sky, enveloping him completely. Boom! Suddenly, a long howl reached the sky. Yichen held the saber in one hand and slashed out. Just this slash seemed to have lifted the entire world. In an instant, the saber chi traversed thousands of meters. It was like a storm in the night. The sun shone on the east sea, the 1,000-layered waves. The saber came out of the forbidden land, the king's head in his hand, and the long saber hung in the moon. As the saber slashed out, his aura also reached a peak. Boom! A thunderous sound reverberated through a radius of 10 miles. A tide-like airwave swept across the entire Dabongsa Mountain. Wherever the airwave passed, everything, whether it was rocks or trees, was toppled, as if the sky was shaking and the earth was shaking. Meanwhile, Yichen was still standing where he was. He stood still like a pillar that could stabilize the sea. Meanwhile, everything around him was in chaos. There were rumbling sounds, and there were faint screams coming from the ground. The next moment, an exceptionally sorry figure fell from the sky. The black robe on Kim Tianxing's body had long since been torn to shreds, and his body was covered in wounds. Blood flowed out of the wounds, making him look like a bloody man. "You, who exactly are you?" Kim Tianxing stared at Yi Chen while panting heavily. His gaze was like a ghost. Yi Chen's slash had torn his black robe in the blink of an eye. If he had not reacted quickly enough to hide in the sky in time, he would have been killed by the slash long ago. Even so, he was hit by the saber chi that spread out, and his body was on the verge of shattering. He could not help but secretly regret coming to take revenge on Yi Chen when he thought about this. This damned Chinese brat. Who exactly was he? Could he be the successor of a Chinese holy land? Remember, the person who killed you is Mad Southern Yi from China. Yi Chen's expression was indifferent, as if that slash was just a casual strike. What? You're Mad Southern Yi? The number one person in China? Mad Southern Yi? Kim Tianxing's face was filled with shock when he heard that. His voice was extremely sharp, as if he had heard something unbelievable. His voice was neither loud nor soft, but it reverberated within a radius of 10 miles. It shocked the people of the Jin clan who were watching from a close distance, as well as the people who were waiting outside the Daofoam Mountain. The crowd burst into an uproar. It turned out that the person who was fighting with the Kim family's patriarch was not from Korea, but from China. Moreover, it was the number one person in China, Mad Southern Yi. They could not be more familiar with this name. After all, the netizens of the two countries had quarreled endlessly on the internet because of the pressure Samsung had put on China. At that time, the netizens of Korea had provoked Mad Southern Yi from afar. They thought that they were just trying to vent their anger, but they did not expect Mad Southern Yi to really kill his way into Korea. Thinking to this point, countless people felt dizzy. Everyone from the Kim family was stunned. It's a misunderstanding. Mad Southern Yi, this is a misunderstanding. Kim Tianxing's expression changed drastically when he reacted. He could not help but want to retreat. Mad Southern Yi's 3 slashes had almost crippled him. How could he continue fighting against such a person? Can my blade kill you? Yi Chen pressed forward with an indifferent expression. Kim Tianxing's strength was at most equivalent to Shun Tiannan's level. However, in terms of combat strength, he was no match for Shun Tiannan. After all, his life was coming to an end, and he did not have much blood essence and vitality left. How could he unleash anything? No, Mad Southern Yi, you can't kill me. Seeing that he was closing in, Kim Tianxing's expression changed drastically. I'm a member of the Kim family, and I'm Inshurs, before he could finish a sentence. He was killed by Yi Chen with a single slash. The two halves of the corpse fell to the ground at high speed. The head of the Kim family, Kim Hong-yu, opened his eyes and spat a mouthful of blood. He almost fainted. Patriarch. The rest of the Kim family seemed to have frozen. Their Kim family's patriarch was dead. Moreover, he was killed by the China number one, Mad Southern Yi. I can't let you live. Yi Chen took in the scene below him. Subsequently, he slashed at the surrounding cliffs with his sword. Countless rocks smashed into the ground with a rumble, and waves of screams could be heard. Outside Dabongshan Mountain, it was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked by the words Kim Tianxing shouted before he died. You're the China number one, Mad Southern Yi. Chen Feng and Lin Inuo were even more stunned. They had never expected that the person fighting Kim Tianxing would be a Chinese. After Lin Inuo reacted, she could not help but ask the old man surnamed Han. Mr. Han, may I know who this Mad Southern Yi is? You're Chinese, but you've never heard of Mad Southern Yi? The old man, surnamed Han, frowned. Seeing that she really did not know, he was about to speak. A member of the Kim family rushed out of Dabongshan Mountain. As he ran, he wailed, Dead, the patriarch is dead. The patriarch is dead. They're all dead. They're all dead. The world was deathly silent. Everyone's expressions froze. The patriarch of the Kim family, the leader of the 4 great families of Korea, Kim Tianxing, a world powerhouse who had dominated Korea for decades. He was actually dead. Moreover, he was killed by mad Southern Yi from China. Chapter 506. Seoul time, 22:37 p.m., 2018. The entire cultivation world of Korea was completely shaken. The patriarch of the Kim family, Kim Tiansheng, a powerhouse at the peak of the cultivation world of Korea, was dead. Moreover, he was killed by the number one person in China, mad Southern Yi. The upper echelons of the Kim family were almost wiped out. The moment Kim Tiansheng died, the news was like lightning. It set off from Seoul and quickly shook the entire cultivation world of Korea. Then, it spread to China and other Southeast Asian countries. The cultivation world of Korea was the most shocked. Not to mention the status of the Kim family in Korea, just the death of Kim Tiansheng alone was not something they could accept. After all, Kim Tiansheng's status in the cultivation world of Korea was equivalent to that of a leading figure. He represented the development of the cultivation world of Korea, and he was also a role model and pinnacle. Now, with his death, not only did it deal a blow to the face of the cultivation world of Korea, but it also proved that the cultivation world of Korea was far inferior to the cultivation world of China. Before they could react, another piece of news was released. Mad Southern Yi had killed his way into the Park family and killed Master Jindo. The Park family submitted. This news was like a heavy bomb that set off another wave. First, he killed the Park family. Then he destroyed the Kim family. All of this was done by Mad Southern Yi alone. Was Mad Southern Yi trying to suppress a country by himself? On the other hand, the Chinese cultivation world across the sea was extremely excited. The forum specially set up for the people of the cultivation world in China was currently in an uproar. Good, well done. As expected of Mad Southern Yi. It's fine if he doesn't move, but once he does, he'll definitely be able to topple mountains and overturn the seas. Mad Southern Yi used his fist to tell those Koreans, "No Zuanababi." First, he killed the Park family. Then he destroyed the Kim family. In China, only Mad Southern Yi would have such spirit. He's really made the Chinese proud. Haha, these guys were still clamoring on the internet earlier. Why do they get slapped in the face? Just thinking about it makes me feel pain for them. If I remember correctly, there was a Taekwondo coach in Korea. He seemed to have said that as long as Mad Southern Yi dared to go to Korea, he would teach Mad Southern Yi a lesson. Am I right? If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. There's really such a thing. What's this grandson's name again? Li Zifeng. Yes, his name is Li Zifeng. I think he's the coach of the Wuda Taekwondo Dojo in Korea. Everyone calm down. I'm a Taekwondo 9th Dan black belt, after all. I'm very powerful. Sob, I'm so scared. What kind of F asterisk King 9th Dan black belt is this? Seoul Hotel, in a VIP private room. At this moment, Dai Tinglu was holding a brush in his hand and waving it with all his might. It was a habit he had developed over the years. Every time there was a big event, he would practice calligraphy. In his opinion, practicing calligraphy could make one's mind focus and even calm down. Old Wu stood silently at the side. At this time, a member of the Jean family quickly rushed in and knelt on the ground, saying with incomparable pain and humiliation, "Mr. Dai, please take revenge for my Jean family." When Dai Tinglu heard this, the brush in his hand paused. He suddenly turned around and said, "Kim Tiansheng lost. Defeated." The people of the Jean family wailed in grief. "The ancestor is dead. The patriarch is also dead. My Jean family is almost extinct. Mr. Dai, please take revenge for my Jean family for the sake of the relationship between our two families." Clatter. The brush in Dai Tinglu's hand fell to the ground, but his expression changed drastically. What? Kim Tiansheng is dead? Who killed him? He knew Kim Tiansheng's strength very well. He knew him very well. In the entire China, there were only a few people who could defeat him, let alone in Korea. Now, he had actually been killed. It's Mad Southern Yi. It's the number one person in China, Mad Southern Yi, who killed the patriarch. As soon as that was said, Dai Tinglu's face twitched slightly, and an extreme shock rose in his heart. His expression changed a few times, and suddenly he waved his hand. The member of the Jean family died on the spot. "Master, what are you doing?" Old Wu, who was standing at the side, was shocked. Oomph. Dai Ting Lu could not help but sneer. This person is really stupid. He actually wants me to kill Mad Southern Yi? My junior brother, Shun Tianan, and senior brother, Lei Feihu, both died in Mad Southern Ye's hands. How can I be his match? Old Wu immediately came to a realization. Moreover, this person has forgotten that I'm also Chinese. Dai Ting Lu narrowed his eyes, and a cold glint flashed in them. It doesn't matter if the Chinese fight to the death behind closed doors, but this is Korea. How can we do something like brothers fighting each other? Master, about Shiyu and Kim Wenja. Old Wu wanted to say something, but hesitated. Dai Ting Lu glanced at him coldly. Don't mention this again. At the same time, in a small bamboo forest in Busan, Korea. The bamboo forest was about a few hundred square meters. Although it was night, one could still hear the gurgling of water and the croaking of frogs. At the end of the bamboo forest was a straw hut. The straw hut was about a few dozen square meters and was very shabby. The beams at the door were covered with corn, peppers, garlic, and other crops. It looked like an ordinary farmhouse. However, at that moment, there were more than 20 people kneeling on one knee outside the straw hut. They looked at the dim candlelight inside the straw hut with incomparable respect. Everyone's expression was incomparably resentful. If there were outsiders present, they would definitely be shocked to discover that the 20 or so people present were all at the peak of the cultivation world in Korea. Every single one of them was a big shot who could dominate an area. Ensure, Mad Southern Yi first killed the Park family in Jindo. Then, he killed Kim Tiansheng and destroyed the Kim family. Such actions are simply heartless. He treats the cultivation world of Korea as nothing. Today, we have come to ask for Ensure to take action and restore the dignity of Korea. The leader, an old man in black, pressed his face tightly against the ground. His hands were above his head, and his attitude was extremely sincere. As soon as he finished speaking, the people behind him said in unison, Ensure, please take action and kill Mad Southern Yi to restore the dignity of Korea. Creak. The wooden door that had been closed for a long time was pushed open. A boy dressed as a Taoist boy walked out with a lantern and said softly, Everyone, please return. Grandfather is already asleep. Moreover, 50 years ago, he swore that he would no longer interfere in the matters of the cultivation world. No, the old man in black from before was extremely sorrowful. Ensure is the #1 person in the cultivation world of Korea 50 years ago and the guardian of Korea. How can you sit back and watch us be humiliated? At this point, he sobbed and said, If Ensure doesn't agree, we will immediately commit suicide in front of Ensure's wooden door. There was still no reaction from the straw hut. The old man in black smiled bitterly and immediately slapped the top of his head. Then he fell to the ground, blood flowing nonstop. At the same time, the other man also slapped his palm toward the top of his head. Another person had fallen. When there were less than 10 people left, a white-robed old man walked out of the straw hut, trembling. The old man was extremely old, and he was so thin that he was like a bag of bones. He wore a white robe, and the depths of his eyes revealed an aura that could see through the affairs of the world. He indifferently sized up the corpses on the ground, then sighed softly, Why? Send out the battle invitation. In 3 days, I will invite the #1 person in China, Mad Southern Yi, to fight against the Crimson Afterglow Peak. Since we're going to determine who's stronger, we'll also decide life and death. Chapter 507. Ensure. Most people might not have heard of this name, but he was a legend, and even a legend among the upper echelons of Korea's cultivation world. This person was an extremely ancient figure in Korea. Rumor had it that when Ensure was born, he had a 7-star pattern on his back and a 7-star essence in his mouth. As soon as he opened his eyes, he could speak. When his father carried him in his arms, Ensure, who had just turned 1 month old, said that his father would die in less than a month. Although his family was surprised by Ensure's strangeness and thought that he had encountered an evil spirit, they invited a famous Taoist priest in Korea to chant scriptures to help him overcome his misfortune. Unexpectedly, The Taoist priest suddenly went crazy and fell from a tall building to his death after just one glance at Einshur. A month later, Einshur's father died in a mine accident, just as Einshur had said. The members of the Ein family died one after another, and Einshur became a jinx in everyone's eyes. He was abandoned in the wilderness when he was not even a year old. At that time, there was no lack of jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards on Korea Mountain. When the neighbors thought that the young Einshur would definitely die, who would have thought that a woodcutter would go up the mountain and see a 2-year-old child giggling in a pack of wolves? The woodcutter panicked and died. Einshur grew up in the milk of hundreds of beasts. When he was 16 years old, he preached to hundreds of beasts under a tree. The beasts actually showed signs of understanding. After that, they stopped eating meat and became vegetarian. They ate green fruits in the forest and drank the dew in the mountains. The brat that Einshur was clamoring on. Yes, Li Zifeng, it's you. Come out quickly. You actually deleted your Weibo account. Weren't you quite capable before? Tianan, China. Mingming was scrolling through TikTok on her phone when she suddenly saw a video about Yichun. She could not help but say happily, "Mommy, Daddy is going to beat up the bad guys." Su Yuhan, who was knitting a sweater for her, took it over and took a look. She realized that there were no photos or videos of Yichun on it. It was accompanied by some pictures of ancient TV dramas that she found online. Then, she used an artificial voice to describe Yichun's battle achievements. She could not help but ask curiously, "How do you know this is Daddy?" "It's Daddy because Daddy is Mad Southern Yi." The little girl nodded with certainty. Subsequently, she mimicked Yichun with her hands behind his back and said in all seriousness, "You 3 trash can come at me together. I, Mad Southern Yi, have nothing to fear." Puffed. Su Yuhan could not help but laugh out loud. However, if one took a closer look, there was deep worry between her brows. She took out her phone immediately and called Yichun as she thought to this point. China, Heavenly Palace's headquarters. Many of the higher-ups looked at the figure sitting at the head of the table with reverence. The middle-aged man in the lead cupped his fists and said, "Palace Master, Einshur's information has been recorded in our heavenly hall for decades. 60 years ago, he was ranked 4th on the world ranking. Now that he has lived in seclusion for 50 years, I wonder how terrifying his power is." Chapter 508. I didn't expect Mad Southern Yi to be able to force such a person out. If he wins, doesn't that mean? The expression of the other man from the Heavenly Palace changed drastically. Everyone fell silent. If Mad Southern Yi defeated Einshur, it meant that his combat power was at least 4th on the world ranking, while their hallmaster was only 5th. Guan Shanyue, who was sitting at the head of the table, had an extremely gloomy expression. He swept his gaze across the crowd indifferently. "What are you panicking for? As far as I know, Einshur has been living in seclusion all these years, but in reality, he has been searching for a way to step into origin energy. Since he dares to come out now, he must have already stepped into origin energy." At this point, he could not help but sneer. Mad Southern Yi will definitely die if he goes against him. In this way, it can be considered as indirectly solving my greatest problem. My senior brother no longer has the ability to change anything. Everyone nodded immediately. Seoul Hotel in Korea. Dai Tinglu looked at the message on his phone. His wrist was trembling slightly, and his voice was extremely hoarse. The number 1 person in Korea, Einshur, has challenged the number 1 person in China, Mad Southern Yi, to a battle in 3 days. No one could understand his current feelings. He more or less had some understanding of Einshur. He knew that this person was an extremely ancient existence, even older than him. In terms of age, he was old enough to be his master. He did not expect such a person to be forced out by Mad Southern Yi. Moreover, he had even issued a challenge to determine who was stronger and who would die. This proved that Yichun's strength had reached a level where Einshur valued him. Most importantly, it was rumored that Mad Southern Yi was only 30 years old. This kid is really... Dai Tinglu's heart was in turmoil. He did not know what words to use to describe Yichun. Monster? Terrifying? No, these were far from enough. Old Wu, who was at the side, opened his phone and looked at it. He was also shocked. He then asked, "Master, are we going to take a look in 3 days?" Why not? Dai Tinglu took a deep breath in and nodded slowly. This battle concerns the dignity of China. I have to go. I can use this opportunity to get to know the legendary mad Southern Yi. At this point, he could not help but subconsciously glance at Dai Shiyu's room next door. He muttered softly, Xiao Yu, if you can catch mad Southern Ye's eyes, I'm willing to shorten my lifespan by 30 years. Hotel Shilla. Yi Chun returned to the 21st floor of the hotel with a calm expression. Park Hai-shin and Chi Wanqing had been waiting for him in the room. The moment she saw him, Park Hai-shin could not help but ask, Master, didn't you go to kill Kim Tiansheng? Just as she finished speaking, she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes widened as she stammered. You killed Jean Tiansheng. She was a smart person. When she saw that Yi Chun had returned safely, she realized that Yi Chun had won and Kim Tiansheng was dead. At this moment, her phone rang. She picked it up and listened for a few seconds. Her whole body froze on the spot, and the phone fell to the ground with a thud. She had just received news that not only had Yi Chun killed the patriarch of the Kim family, Kim Tiansheng, but he had also forced the number one person in Korea, Inshur, who had retired for decades, to issue a challenge. Before this, although the Park family had submitted to Yi Chun, it was because they were not strong enough that they could only be controlled by others. They had a sliver of hope that Yi Chun would be killed by the experts of Korea. However, with the news, Park Hai-shin and the Park family were shocked to the extreme. The tiny thought hidden in their hearts was also extinguished. Only Chi Wanqing, who was at the side, was at a loss. She had no idea what had happened, but her pretty face was a little dazed. She looked at Yi Chun with fear in her eyes. It was obvious that she was still immersed in the scene of Kim Wenjia's death. Park Hai-shin knelt respectfully in front of Yi Chun and said respectfully, Master, I just received news that the Li family and the Han family have sent people to send you a challenge. They're downstairs now. Challenge? Yi Chun was surprised. That's interesting. Let them come up. Park Hai-shin immediately nodded and walked down personally. Not long after, she brought 3 men in suits over. The leader was a middle-aged man with a cold attitude. Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi, I'm Li Longwei from the Li family. I'm here to send you a challenge on behalf of Inshur. With that, he handed over a piece of paper that looked like a gold-stamped envelope. Yi Chun took it and looked at it for a moment. Subsequently, he looked at him with a faint smile and said, Inshur from Korea has invited me to fight at the Crimson Afterglow Peak in 3 days. That's right, Han Longwei said with a cold expression. Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi, you entered Korea and killed people. You even destroyed the Kim family. Such actions are truly disrespectful to the cultivation world of Korea. Therefore, for the sake of the dignity of Korea, Inshur has issued a challenge to you. You issued a challenge? Do I have to accept the challenge? Who do you think you are? Yi Chun could not help but scoff. The 3 of them flew into a rage when they heard this. An old man behind Han Longwei could not help but say angrily, Mad Southern Yi, could it be that you're afraid of Inshur's power, so you don't dare to accept the challenge? Are all Chinese people like you who bully the weak and fear the strong? How dare you? How dare you blaspheme China? Yi Chun squinted slightly as the aura on his body exploded. A spiritual pressure attacked the other party directly. The other party knelt on the ground with a thud and could not move. Fear was written all over his face. Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi, this matter concerns the dignity of the cultivation world of the 2 countries. As the number 1 person in China, you won't refuse, right? Han Longwei suppressed his anger and said, Don't provoke me with those words. A mocking smirk appeared at the corner of Yi Chun's lips as if he was disdainful. I can do it if you want me to, but you have to pay something. What is it? Han Longwei frowned. Yi Chun looked at him coldly and enunciated word by word. After this battle, I want the cultivation world of Korea to publicly declare that you're no match for the cultivation world of China. Be ****. Another person shouted angrily. Before the battle even started, before the outcome was decided, they were already thinking about making the cultivation world of Korea admit that they were inferior. They were truly arrogant. All right, we agree. Mad Southerny, you won't win. Han Longwei took a deep breath and agreed. After he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. Master, have you really decided? Park Hai-shin could not help but ask. The king dies for the country. The Son of Heaven guards the gates of the country. Yichen glanced at her. You don't understand. After saying this, he turned his gaze to Qi Wanqing. You can go back. Today's incident has nothing to do with you. I promise that your life won't be affected at all. Qi Wanqing opened her mouth, looking like she wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she didn't say anything. She picked up her bag and left the hotel in a hurry. She actually wanted to ask what the relationship between Yi Chan and Qianqian was, but she swallowed the question when it reached her mouth. Was Mr. Yi a good person or a bad person? Call him a bad guy? He did not offend me in the slightest, and his words and actions were very respectful towards women. Say that he is a good person. He killed Kim Wenjie at the slightest disagreement. He regarded life as worthless. He could ask Qianqian when he got back. Thinking of this, she calmed herself down and rushed home. Chapter 509. Late at night, Qi Wanqing dragged her tired body to the door of the house and squeezed out a shy smile. Qianqian, I'm back. The lights in the house were not turned on, so it was dark. Bada. The door was open from the inside, and then Qianqian poked her little black head out. When she saw Qi Wanqing, she was pleasantly surprised and staggered out. Sister Wanqing, you're finally back. The little girl hugged her tightly. Her voice was a little hoarse, and her thin body was trembling slightly as if she had just cried. Tell me what's wrong. Sensing her abnormality, Qi Wanqing picked her up from the ground. Qianqian was too light and too thin. Even a weak woman like her could carry her effortlessly. Sister Wanqing, the power went out just now. The little girl's eyes were red as she said, the room is so dark. Qianqian is afraid. There was an auntie who kept knocking on the door. Qianqian was very obedient to you. She didn't answer and didn't open the door. Qianqian thought, Sister Wanqing didn't want me anymore. The little girl was very strong. She did not cry during Qi Wanqing's departure. However, after Qi Wanqing returned, she finally could not help but cry. There were crystal clear tears at the corners of her eyes. Are you afraid of the dark? Qi Wanqing suddenly understood. Then, she took out her phone and turned on the flashlight. She carried her into the house and placed her on the sofa. Then, she rummaged through the cupboard to find a candle and lit it. There was finally a glimmer of light in the house. She used the flashlight to check the power supply and found that it was not because of a trip. It seemed that the power had really gone out. Don't worry. I'll go to the landlady and ask her what's going on. With that, she was about to go out. The little girl hurriedly pulled her back. Sister Wanqing, don't leave me alone. Okay. I'll take you with me. Qi Wanqing shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She held her little hand and walked to another house in the neighborhood with the flashlight. The house she was living in now was arranged by her management company. Many of the company's artists also lived in this neighborhood. What puzzled her was that the other houses had electricity, but her house did not. The landlord was a slightly plump middle-aged woman. She was applying a facial mask in the living room. Beside her was a young man who was reading a financial report. Qi Wanqing took the initiative to explain the reason for her visit. Sister Wang, why is my house the only one without power? The other places are fine. Miss Qi, it's good that you're here. There's a temporary construction going on in the district tonight, and there are a few damaged electric cables. Your house happens to be one of them. Sister Wang said apologetically, I just went to your house to look for you, but after knocking on the door for a long time, no one responded to me. Plus, I couldn't get through to your phone. But don't worry, it will be fixed by noon tomorrow. The young man at the side raised his eyes and sized up Qi Wanqing. A hint of amazement flashed across his eyes. However, when his gaze landed on Qianqian, he was stunned at first. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and became very excited. Miss Qi, you have a child? The young man asked calmly and glanced at Qianqian. Qi Wanqing quickly denied it. No, she's the child of a friend of mine. She's going on a business trip for 2 days, so she asked me to take care of her. This is my son, Zheng Yi. He's currently working at a research institute. It's rare for him to come home, Sister Wang introduced. Hello, Mr. Zheng. Qi Wanqing politely said a few words before leaving Sister Wang's house with Qianqian. Zheng Yi watched the two of them leave silently. His eyes flickered nonstop. If he remembered correctly, the person the higher-ups were looking for seemed to be the little girl Qi Wanqing had brought with her. Half an hour later, a bowl of scallion noodles was placed on the table. Under the candlelight, Qi Wanqing carefully wiped the chopsticks clean and handed them to Qianqian, who was standing at the side and staring at the noodles eagerly. Eat. I know you're hungry. Sister Wanqing, you're so good at Qianqian. The little girl seemed to be starving. She could not care less about the scalding noodles. She picked up the chopsticks and started eating. Her little face was flushed red. Eat slowly. It's hot. Seeing this scene, not only did Qi Wanqing not laugh, but she also blamed herself even more. She knew the secret of the little girl's fear of the dark. To be precise, it was claustrophobia. She had been gone for at least 2 hours. Under such circumstances, the little girl did not go out even though she was afraid of the dark. She still did not dare to cry out in fear. How much perseverance did this require? She bit her lip and suddenly made a decision. Qianqian, I'll ask you a question. You're not allowed to lie. Sister Wanqing, ask away. The little girl put down her chopsticks and looked at her seriously. Qi Wanqing hesitated for a moment before finally asking, You told me before that you have a big brother and big sister who adopted you in China, right? Yes, yes. The little girl nodded like a chick pecking at rice. They treat Qianqian very well, just like how Sister Wanqing treats Qianqian. Then do you know that big brother's surname? What's his name? Qi Wanqing continued to ask. The little girl was stunned. Then, she counted with her fingers and said, Sister Mingming's surname is Yi, and she's big brother's child. Big brother's surname should be Yi, right? Surname Yi. Qi Wanqing's heart trembled. Could Mr. Yi really be the big brother that Qianqian mentioned? Most importantly, Mr. Yi really did not lie to her. Did he come to Korea this time to look for Qianqian? Under the impact of all kinds of emotions, Qi Wanqing's emotions were very complicated. After a few seconds, she asked, Then do you want to return to Big Brother's side? Yes. The little girl nodded without thinking. Qianqian really wants to go back and play with Sister Mingming. Sister Mingming is the first child who doesn't bully Qianqian. She even secretly gave me a warm thing to eat. I think it's called a pill. Qi Wanqing's face turned pale. Suddenly, she felt like she had been abandoned by the entire world. That's true. Qianqian has only been with me for a few days. Besides, I don't have the extra ability to take care of her. I can't be so selfish. Thinking to this point, she took a deep breath and slowly took out her phone to call her manager. Sister Ling, can I trouble you to ask Director Park for Mr. Ye's phone number? Just tell him that I have something important. Before she could finish speaking, a gust of cold wind suddenly blew in from outside the window. She had just taken a breath when she fell to the ground unconscious. Sister Wanqing, what's wrong? The little girl subconsciously ran over. The next moment, the door to the room was kicked open, and a few mysterious men jumped in like ghosts. Without any explanation, they pounced on Qianqian. Who are you people? Qianqian fell to the ground. However, when these men were about to touch Qianqian, their bodies suddenly froze. They did not move at all, as if they had been immobilized. Chapter 5:10. Then a white-haired young man walked over with his hands behind his back. The white-haired young man's gaze stopped on Qianqian, and a long-lost smile appeared on his cold and weathered face. As for the men around him, they did not seem to be in his eyes at all. With every step the young man took, he would pass through a man's body, and the man's body would collapse. Throughout the entire process, he did not have any aura at all, just like a modest young master. After walking to Qianqian's side, the white-haired young man reached out to help her up and said gently, Do you still remember me? The little girl looked at him blankly. Then, her face was filled with pain as if she was trying her best to recall something. It was a little familiar. Her subconscious told her that the uncle in front of her would not harm her. Looks like you really don't remember. A trace of sadness flashed across the white-haired young man's eyes. Then he said, "That's true. After all, 50 years have passed. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. One day, you will remember everything." Qian asked timidly, "Uncle, what's your name?" "Sure, Qian Han of the demonic Tao." The white-haired young man was like a stone statue, his expression unchanged. "Come with me. I'll bring you to that crazy Taoist from back then, and also to my Yu'er." The word Yu'er caused his eyes to hurt. The little girl seemed to have thought of something, and her face lit up. "Uncle, you want to bring me to Grandpa? Grandpa's son? So his surname is Son?" The white-haired young man came to a realization. As he spoke, he was about to hold the little girl's hand. However, the little girl took a few steps back and said timidly, "I can't go with you now. I have to wait for Sister Wanqing to wake up and say goodbye to her." "All right, I promise you." The white-haired young man nodded slightly. Suddenly, he looked out of the room with a calm expression. "Wait for me here. I'll kill a few dogs and come back. What's the harm in being your protector today?" Before he could finish his sentence, he had already disappeared. At the same time, in China's heavenly palace, the palace master of the heavenly palace, Guan Shanyue, looked at the man and woman in front of him fearfully and frowned. "The two of you want me to look for a little girl and a lunatic?" "That's right," a long-haired young man said expressionlessly. "This is the order of the Shao clan's leader. These two are very important to us. I hope that you can complete it as soon as possible." Hearing the words Shao family patriarch, a hint of fear flashed through Guan Shanyue's eyes, and he immediately nodded and said, "All right, I'll arrange for someone to look for these two people." 3 days passed in a flash. The decisive battle that had attracted the attention of the cultivation world of both Korea and China was approaching. Countless people from the cultivation world headed to the location of the decisive battle, the Crimson Afterglow Peak, which was located at the back mountain of the Wuda Taekwondo Dojo in Korea. After breakfast, Yi Chun was led by Park Haishin to the venue of the final battle. As soon as they arrived, they found that there were many people gathered at the foot of the mountain. There were people from Fusang, America, Hua, Russia, and many other overseas countries. Moreover, all of them were at the Grandmaster realm. It could be said that more than half of the masters in the world were present. After all, the battle between Yi Chun and Inshur was too shocking. It represented a battle between the two peak powerhouses of the cultivation world in China and Korea. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a rare encounter. "Master, the entrance is there." Park Haishin pointed at the entrance that was guarded by many troops in the distance and frowned. "Let's go." Yi Chun nodded slightly. Just as he was about to go over, an extremely surprised voice suddenly came from behind him. "Mr. Yi?" He looked back and saw 3 men and a woman in black training clothes walking over. There were 2 men and 1 woman, and the woman with a graceful figure was looking at him with a face full of surprise at the moment. It was Lin Yinua, who had parted ways with him on the plane. The young man behind her was Chun Feng. When he saw Yi Chun, Chun Feng's expression immediately darkened. He said with a fake smile, "Why are you here?" They were there to watch the earth-shattering battle that day. Never had they thought that they would bump into Yi Chun here. He was already pissed off about Yi Chun on the plane because Yi Chun looked down on them for coming to learn Taekwondo. "Mr. Yi, are you here to watch this battle too?" Lin Yinua rolled her eyes at Chun Feng before looking at Yi Chun with a smile. When her gaze stopped at Park Haishin, she was stunned at first. Then, she thought that she was Yi Chun's friend. Yi Chun smiled. "I guess so. Everyone who comes here is a big shot. Why are you, an ordinary person, here to watch? If you don't want to embarrass yourself, you'd better go back quickly." Chun Feng could not help but sneer. Park Haishin flew into a rage. Just as she was about to speak, Chun Feng said again, "By the way, let me introduce you to the person beside me. He's the coach of the Wuda Taekwondo Dojo, Coach Li Zifeng. I'm not afraid to tell you that he's a 9th Dan Taekwondo black belt." His brows were filled with a flaunting expression. Li Zifeng was a famous Taekwondo expert in the Wuda Taekwondo Dojo. In order to become his disciple, he and Lin Yinua had tried countless methods. The Li Zifeng he spoke of was a middle-aged man from Korea with tan skin, slender legs, and full of strength. You're the kid Chen Feng mentioned who looks down on Taekwondo? So what if I am? Yi Chen said expressionlessly. Li Zifeng's expression was extremely gloomy as he said, Chinese kid, how dare you look down on Korea's Taekwondo? If there's a chance, I'd like to challenge you and see where your confidence comes from. Sure, I'll accompany you anytime. Yi Chen nodded slightly. Coach Li, seeing that the two sides were suddenly at loggerheads, Lin Yinhua hurriedly tried to smooth things over and said, Mr. Yi didn't mean what he said earlier. Please don't bother with him. Li Zifeng's strength was obvious to all. He was a 9th Dan Taekwondo black belt. Not to mention Mr. Yi alone, even 10 of them together would not be a match for him. As she spoke, she kept giving Yi Chen meaningful looks. She gestured for him to stop talking nonsense. Li Zifeng snorted coldly. His face was filled with arrogance, and he looked like he did not care about Yi Chen at all. As a most famous Taekwondo coach in Korea, who would dare to not give him face wherever he went? However, not only did Yi Chen's words not show any respect, he even dared to accept his challenge. A smug smile appeared on Chen Feng's face. He could already see the scene of Yi Chen being KO'd by Li Zifeng. All right, let's go in quickly. Otherwise, we'll have to stand at the back and watch the battle. Lin Yinhua smiled and led everyone toward the entrance. Along the way, Li Zifeng and Chen Feng tacitly chose not to talk to Yi Chen. It was as if they wanted to deliberately ignore him. On the other hand, Lin Yinhua could not stop chattering. When she talked about today's earth-shattering battle, Lin Yinhua's pretty face was filled with excitement. By the way, Mr. Yi, have you heard of Mad Southern Yi? Chapter 511. Mad Southern Yi? Yi Chen looked rather stunned. Before he could speak, Chen Feng sneered and said, Yinhua, are you stupid to mention Mad Southern Yi to an ordinary person? Only then did Lin Yinhua react. She stuck out her tongue and said, That's true. Mr. Yi isn't from the cultivation world. It's normal for you not to have heard of Mad Southern Yi. In fact, they did not know who Mad Southern Yi was before. It was only after that night at Debongson Mountain that they gradually learned about the cultivation world. They were even more shocked by the news of Mad Southern Yi killing Kim Tiansheng, especially after finding out that Mad Southern Yi was Chinese. Lin Yinhua was so excited that she could not sleep well for a few days. Mr. Yi, you don't know how powerful and handsome this Mad Southern Yi is. Lin Yinhua introduced Yi Chen to him, as if she was sharing an extremely precious thing. At the end of her sentence, her eyes were filled with splendor as she fell into a state of longing. He's the pride and legend of China. Seeing this scene, Chen Feng's heart was aching. The woman he liked was confessing to another man in front of him. It was no different from being a love-struck fool. How could he feel good about it? However, when he thought about how the other party was the #1 person in China, he felt even more respect. He did not even have a right to be jealous of such a person. You'll meet him. Yi Chen felt a little embarrassed by her words. I hope so. Lin Yinhua nodded. Li Zifeng, who had been silent all this while, could not help but say, Don't you think too highly of Mad Southern Yi? What do you mean, Coach Li? Lin Yinhua frowned, her expression turning ugly. Mad Southern Yi was like a hero in her heart. How could she allow others to blaspheme him? Li Zifeng chuckled and said, It's true that Mad Southern Yi is very strong, but don't forget that Inshur isn't weak either. He's even stronger than Mad Southern Yi. Coach Li, are you saying that Mad Southern Yi is no match for Inshur and that he will lose today? Chen Feng was shocked. Of course, Li Zifeng said confidently. You're not from Korea, so you don't know Inshur's status in Korea. In short, not only will Mad Southern Yi lose today, he will also die. Yi Chen could not help but look at him. Huh? Lin Yinhua exclaimed, seemingly unable to accept it. It's only been a year since Mad Southern Yi debuted, right? Although he has a lot of battle achievements, don't forget that he is only in his 30s. Li Zifeng struck while the iron was hot and said, As for Korea's Inshur, he has already lived for over 150 years. He was the #1 person in Korea 50 years ago. In terms of combat experience and cultivation time, do you think a mere Mad Southern Yi will be a match for Inshur? Chen Feng nodded. Yinhua, what Coach Li said makes sense. No. Mad Southern Yi will definitely win. Lin Yinua's face turned pale. She bit her lips and said fiercely. However, she did not have enough confidence. Obviously, she felt that Coach Li's analysis was correct. Chun Feng saw her reaction and a smile gradually appeared on his face. Although he could not do anything to Mad Southern Yi, he would be happy to see Mad Southern Yi die at Inshi's hands. When they were talking, they didn't notice the mockery in Park Haishin's eyes. Mad Southern Yi is right in front of you. It's fine if you have eyes, but fail to recognize Mount Tai. Instead, you even boasted shamelessly that he would lose in front of him. You are really a group of frogs at the bottom of a well. Master has a good temper and doesn't bother with you. I want to see what your expressions will be when Master wins. The few of them talked as they walked. Soon, they arrived near the Crimson Afterglow Peak. Crimson Afterglow Peak. This was a mountain that was not considered high above sea level. The reason it was famous was because every time it rained, the peak would emit a brilliant glow. From afar, it looked like a paradise on earth. This place attracted many tourists because of the spectacle. If it was a legal holiday, it would be difficult to get a ticket to this place. However, today the Korean government had sealed off the outside world. For safety reasons, they only allowed people from the cultivation world to come. As far as the eye could see, the mountain was filled with densely packed people. They had different skin colors and were dressed differently. Even so, the entire Crimson Afterglow Peak was incomparably quiet. Everyone chose to remain silent. This was because today, there would be 2 peak experts from the world fighting here. The cultivation world of Korea was going against the cultivation world of China. There are so many people. Lin Inua could not help but exclaim. An old man at the side immediately glared at her. Silence. This is the place where 2 experts are fighting. How can you make such a racket? Lin Inua could only stick out her tongue and did not dare to make a sound. She widened her beautiful eyes and looked around, even holding her breath. At this moment, Li Zifeng said, Chun Feng, Lin Inua, follow me. I'll introduce someone to you. After saying that, he took the lead and walked over. Mr. Yi, we'll look for you later. Lin Inua looked at Yi Chun, smiled politely, and followed him. Master, the people from the Han family and the Li family are here. Can I leave as well? Park Haishin said respectfully. At this moment, there would be bets between the few wealthy families. As a subsidiary force of Yi Chun, the Park family was naturally no exception. It could be considered as cheering for Yi Chun. Go! Yi Chun nodded slightly. As soon as Park Haishin left, 2 men and a woman walked over. The leader was a man in a purple robe with a dignified face. Behind him was a beautiful woman who was looking around with her beautiful eyes wide open. The woman glanced at Yi Chun casually. Her gaze paused for a moment, and she could not help but run over. She was pleasantly surprised. Mr. Yi, why are you here too? I'm here to take a look. Yi Chun smiled. He did not expect to see Dai Shiyu here. We're really fated. For the sake of fate, you're not allowed to run away this time. You have to treat me to a meal, Dai Shiyu said with a sweet smile. Just as the 2 of them were talking, Dai Tinglu, who had landed behind them, frowned and said in a deep voice, This brat is really persistent. He really did not like Yi Chun. However, he did not hold it against him for the sake of his daughter. Even when Old Wu attacked last time, he reminded him not to hurt Yi Chun. He only wanted to teach him a lesson. He did not expect Yi Chun to defeat Old Wu. Master, this young man is a martial Dao master. It's not surprising that he came to watch the battle between Mad Southern Yi and Inshi. Old Wu said from the side. He looked at Yi Chun with fear in his eyes. He would never forget the scene where Yi Chun sent him flying with just his aura alone. Dai Tinglu was furious when he saw his daughter talking and laughing with him. He walked to Yi Chun and said with a grim face, Little brother, come with me. I have something to say to you. He decided to teach Yi Chun a lesson personally. P.S. Chapter 3. Today's update is over. Thank you for your support. Chapter 512. On a rocky slope on Crimson Afterglow Peak, 2 figures stepped on the rocks with vigorous steps. They stood in the wind. Yi Chun frowned as he looked at Dai Tinglu, who was standing in front of him with his hands behind his back. I wonder what Mr. Dai wants to say to me? Naturally, he had heard of Dai Tinglu, the #1 person in Shanghai. However, he did not take him to heart. After all, Yichen had killed too many people. A mere Dai Tinglu was nothing to him. Therefore, when Dai Tinglu took the initiative to talk to him in private, he agreed without thinking. On the other hand, Dai Shiyu was extremely nervous. She thought that Dai Tinglu wanted to attack Yichun. What can you see from here? Dai Tinglu did not answer his question. Instead, he pointed at the scene at the foot of the mountain. Yichun looked over when he heard the voice. All he saw were rocks and dense forests. He thought for a moment and said, "There are strange rocks and huge trees that reach the sky. I think this place was an ancient battlefield in ancient times." No. However, Dai Tinglu shook his head slightly and said, "It should be all living beings. Whether it's the strange rock or the dense forest, they represent the vast number of living beings in the world. If one of the stones is placed among them, it will appear very small. It's like a human. This is just the tip of the iceberg in this world." As he spoke to this point, he turned around abruptly and looked at Yichun in a dignified manner. "As for you, you're like a strange rock in this pile of rocks. Perhaps you're eye-catching from here, but what are you in the entire world?" Yichun said in a tone that was neither humble nor arrogant. "What do you mean, Mr. Dai?" This was only the second time he had met Dai Tinglu. The first time they met, they only glanced at each other in a hurry. They did not communicate at all, nor did they have any friendship. He could not understand why this person would say these words to him. "What I mean is very clear." Dai Tinglu smiled faintly. "Don't get any ideas about my daughter." Yichun was speechless when he heard that. He did not expect Dai Tinglu to come looking for him, just for this matter. He had already told Old Wu about his attitude towards Dai Shiyu, but Old Wu still did not believe him. Without waiting for him to speak, Dai Tinglu continued, "I know that you are from the cultivation world and a martial Dao Grandmaster. In fact, to be able to become a martial Dao Grandmaster at your age, it would not be an exaggeration to say that you are extraordinarily talented. However, if you think that your achievements are extraordinary, then you are gravely mistaken." He turned around with his back to Yichun and said while standing with his hand behind his back, "I'm over 80 this year. I became a martial Dao master at the age of 28, and my name shook the world at the age of 30. By the age of 50, there are no more than 5 people in China who can defeat me. In these past few days, I've also seen geniuses that are even more outstanding than you. For example, Jian Wushuang, who leapt to the 11th place on the heaven list at the mere age of 18. Another example is Mad Southern Yi, who's invincible in China at the age of 30 and is respected as the #1 person in China. He's one of the main characters of today's shocking battle." At this point, he turned around and looked at Yichun coldly. He enunciated word by word. "Which one of these people isn't stronger than you? Are you saying that only people like Mad Southern Yi and Jian Wushuang are worthy of your daughter, Dai Shiyu?" A spurious smile appeared at the corner of Yichun's lips. Of course, Dai Tinglu nodded matter-of-factly. "Since Dai Mo has a daughter in his old age, I naturally have to consider her lifelong happiness. The person she marries is either a hero of the world or someone who is not weaker than me. If that's the case, why did you choose to marry the Kim family of Korea? Don't tell me that Kim Wenjie is also considered a hero of the world?" Yichun suddenly laughed. "Kim Wenjie naturally doesn't count." Dai Tinglu shook his head slightly. "In fact, the reason why I chose to marry the Kim family is because I feel that the Kim family is the leader of the 4 great families in Korea. In addition, the patriarch of the Kim family, Kim Tiansheng, is considered one of the top powerhouses in Korea. With such a family background, even if Shiyu is wronged and marries Kim Wenjie, it's still reasonable. Who would have thought that the Kim family would be destroyed by Mad Southern Yi, and Kim Tiansheng would be killed by Mad Southern Yi?" At this point, his face was filled with emotion and reverence. "This is even more certain of the reason why I value Mad Southern Yi. Mad Southern Yi cultivates both magic and martial arts. He has done something that no one in the entire Chinese cultivation world can do. He can be said to be a genius that only appears once in 100 years in China. I even suspect that he is the person who has the highest chance of stabilizing his martial venerable and origin energy stage." After saying that, He sighed softly and looked at Yi-chun. I've already said this much. If you promise not to see Shiyu from now on, I can give you some pointers on martial Dao. Before Yi-chun could speak, he said again, don't be in a hurry to reject me. Perhaps you don't know this, but my understanding of martial Dao is unparalleled in the entire China. After saying that, Dai Tinglu's face was filled with pride. He stared at Yi-chun as if he had seen through him. To him, anyone would be tempted by such a tempting offer, let alone a young man like Yi-chun. However, Yi-chun shook his head. Young man, don't amuse yourself. Dai Tinglu could not help but be furious. He had already said so much, but the young man in front of him still did not know when to stop. Did he really have to force him to make a move? Mr. Dai, I think you're thinking too much. Yi-chun could not help but laugh. He said calmly, I've already said that I have no feelings for Dai Shiyu, and I'm not here for her. It's just a coincidence that we met again today. Don't worry. After this battle, I'll return to China. I won't meet Dai Shiyu again. After saying that, Yi-chun turned around and walked toward the crowd. The entire process was straightforward, and there was no hesitation at all. Only then did Dai Tinglu nod in satisfaction. He shouted from afar, Don't worry, I'm a man of my word. If you have any questions about cultivation in the future, you can ask me. There's no need. Want to guide me? You aren't qualified. An extremely indifferent voice was heard slowly. Dai Tinglu's expression darkened as he snorted coldly. What a proud young man. How dare you say that I'm not qualified to guide you? I like to see how far you can grow. As soon as Yi-chun returned to where he was, Dai Shiyu came up to him immediately. She sized him up from head to toe. Mr. Yi, are you all right? Did my dad do anything to you? During the 10 minutes that Yi-chun and Dai Tinglu had been talking, she was extremely worried. After all, she knew her father's temper. He was famous for being amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. She was afraid that Yi-chun would fight with her father. I'm fine. Yi-chun shook his head lightly. It's good that you're fine. If anything happens, I won't let my dad off. Dai Shiyu heaved a sigh of relief. How you plan to not let me off? At this moment, Dai Tinglu walked over from afar with a dark expression. I'll run away from home. Dai Shiyu snorted coldly. Dai Tinglu's expression darkened. Just as he was about to flare up, he heard a commotion from the crowd behind him. Chapter 5:13. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. The crowd at the back scattered to the side like a surging wave, opening up a very spacious path. A long convoy drove up and down. From afar, it looked like a long dragon. In the lead was a black BMW, followed closely by Porsche, Ford Mustang, Spyker, Bentley Continental, Ferrari, Maserati, and the last one was a Rolls-Royce Phantom that was worth more than 70 million yuan. It was like a car show in the wild. When the convoy stopped, the doors were opened at the same time. Dozens of men in suits and sunglasses walked out of the cars. The onlookers hurriedly retreated again. These people stood silently on both sides of the road. They faced the Rolls-Royce Phantom and bowed at a 45-degree angle, their faces filled with respect. Dad, there's so many cars. I counted and found that there are more than 100 of them, and they are all luxury cars. Dai Shiyu exclaimed. Even as the eldest daughter of the Dai family in Shanghai, this was the first time she had seen so many luxury cars. The scene was magnificent. She was already in such a state, let alone Chan Feng and Lin Yinhua, who were in another group of people. They were already dazzled. Don't speak. Dai Tinglu glared at her. Master, these people seem to be from the two wealthy families of Korea, the Li family and the Han family, Old Wu introduced. Dai Tinglu nodded slightly. The next moment, dozens of men and women walked out of the cars. However, there were men and women, old and young, and they were all dressed differently. Some were wearing black training clothes, some were wearing tang suits, and some were wearing Chinese tunic suits. Most importantly, the auras on these people were not weak. It's the Li family's patriarch, Li Junun, and the Han family's patriarch, Han Si-hai. Oh my God, all the experts in Korea's cultivation world are here. This is unbelievable. Such a scene has never happened in Korea in the past 100 years. After seeing the people present, an uproar broke out in the crowd. Obviously, They did not expect that the battle today would cause all the experts in Korea's cultivation world to come out in full force. Just like the dozens of men in suits, these people stood respectfully on both sides of the road. Yichin smiled noncommittally. Subsequently, he lifted his head to look at the Rolls-Royce Phantom. His eyes flickered nonstop. If he was not mistaken, the person sitting inside was one of the main characters of today's battle, Inshur, the Legend of Korea. The next moment, over 100 people faced the Rolls-Royce Phantom and cupped their fists. They bowed at the same time and said in unison, "Greetings, Inshur." Plop. Everyone knelt on one knee. Their eyes were filled with passion, and their faces were filled with endless respect. Their cheers were filled with righteousness and strength, resounding throughout the entire crimson afterglow peak. The expressions of the bystanders couldn't help but change when they heard this. They all looked at the Rolls-Royce Phantom. That person is coming out. Remember not to speak nonsense. Dai Ting-lu lowered his voice and looked at the Rolls-Royce Phantom with fear. As for the person inside, even he, who had always been conceited, had to admit defeat. At the same time, the door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and a young man dressed as a Taoist boy slowly walked out of the car while supporting an old man in white. The old man was dressed in white, and his beard and hair were all white. He was hunched and only cared about the road beneath his feet, as if he did not see the thousands of people present. "Grandpa, slow down," the little Taoist boy reminded him. Many experts from Korea who were standing around subconsciously walked over to support him. The old man in white waved his hand. "Step down." The Taoist boy immediately stood at the side. The old man in white tried his best to straighten his hunched back. He actually ignored everyone and raised his head to look at the main peak of the crimson afterglow peak. He seemed to be muttering to himself, "After I die, remember to bury my body on Peach Mountain." "Inshur." An expert stood up. His eyes were sore as he said, "You won't die. The scenery of the crimson afterglow peak is not bad, but it's a pity that I came at the wrong time." The old man in white panted heavily, as if every word he said was extremely strenuous. The next moment, he raised his foot and took a step forward. It was very strenuous. He was like an old man who was on the verge of death. Many experts from Korea burst into tears on the spot. At the end of the day, he was still an old man. The legend of Korea was already old, and it was precisely this old man who had no enmity with Mad Southern Yi. He should have been enjoying his old age, but for the sake of Korea's cultivation world and the dignity of Korea, he still came. The old man in white took another step. Before he could even take this step, his entire body froze, and his turbid eyes slowly closed like a petrified statue. Someone stepped forward to check his breathing, and his hand immediately trembled. Inshur has gone. Impossible." His words shocked everyone. Many people from Korea's cultivation world stepped forward to check the old man's body. Then they wailed in pain. Inshur was dead. Their legend died before he could even make a move. Heavens, this is destroying the dignity of Korea. Countless people looked up to the sky and cried bitterly. Dai Shiyu, who was in the distance, was dumbfounded. She could not help but ask, "Dad, is he really dead? Isn't this a little too comical?" He must have reached the end of his lifespan. Dai Ting-lu was not very sure, but when he saw so many people crying, he shook his head. "No, he's not dead." However, Yichin shook his head. Dai Ting-lu sneered, "What do you know? With so many people seeing it with their own eyes, how could it be fake?" However, Yichin stared at the old man in white without blinking. The next moment, the red light on his body shone brightly, as if a rising sun had risen from his body. This red light appeared too suddenly, causing everyone to subconsciously close their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, they saw an old man glowing with red light slowly walking out of the old man's body. The old man was exactly the same as the old man in white, but his body was covered in multicolored light. Inshur is not dead. That's great. Inshur is not dead. There's hope for Korea. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Obviously, they had never seen someone who looked exactly the same as him appear in their body. Could it be? Dai Tinglu's expression changed drastically as if he had thought of something. Could this be a primordial spirit? Ainshur has cultivated a primordial spirit. His heart was in turmoil. Ordinary people had 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. These 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls were located in the acupoints of the body and were scattered. When a cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level, they could condense these 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls into one. His words were like a bomb that exploded in the crowd. Countless people were shocked. Ainshur had cultivated a primordial spirit, and he could even leave his body. Facing their shock, the red figure turned into a stream of light and shot towards the main peak of the crimson afterglow peak. At the same time, an extremely old voice shook the entire place. "Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi from China, please come out and fight. P.S. Chapter 2. There are only 2 chapters today. Please let me think about the fight plot and try my best to make everyone feel good and excited." Chapter 514. At this moment, the weather in the sky changed drastically. Previously, the sky was clear, but now it was covered in dark clouds. The dark clouds seemed to want to fall to the ground, causing everyone's expression to change. Ainshur's primordial spirit stood in the air. It was like a red sun standing on the peak of the crimson afterglow peak, emitting a dazzling light that illuminated the earth. From afar, it looked like a sun that wanted to break through the churning sea of clouds. At this moment, everyone looked up at the sky at the same time. All of them were dumbfounded, and their faces were filled with shock. This was the first time they had seen the power of a human being. They were all shocked from the bottom of their hearts. Ainshur is truly a god. Ainshur will definitely win this battle. The people of Korea's cultivation world knelt on the ground and bowed to the red figure on the peak. They were both shocked and excited. On the other hand, the expressions of the people from the Chinese cultivation world changed. Clearly, they did not expect Ainshur's cultivation to be so powerful that his primordial spirit could leave his body. Origin energy. He must have broken through to the origin energy realm. Dai Tinglu exclaimed, "Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi, please come out and fight." Before he could think too much, Ainshur's ancient voice resounded throughout the entire crimson afterglow peak and entered everyone's ears. As his voice fell, at this moment, the thousands of people on the crimson afterglow peak fell silent. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths, not daring to make a single sound. Ainshur had already appeared. Then, the number 1 person in China, Mad Southern Yi, must be here too? For a moment, countless people looked around, trying to find traces of Mad Southern Yi. After all, these 3 words were too resounding. Lin Yinua, who was in the crowd, was no exception. Her hands were tightly clasped together, and her pretty face was flushed. Her beautiful eyes looked left and right. "He's coming out? I wonder what he looks like. He should be very handsome." Chun Feng, who was beside her, had a similar reaction. He could not care less about being jealous. On the other hand, Li Zifeng squatted down with an unnatural expression, as if he had done something guilty. "Coach Li, are you all right?" Chin Feng was puzzled. I'm fine." Li Zifeng smiled awkwardly and hurriedly explained, "That my stomach hurts a little. You don't have to worry about me. I'll just squat for a while." "Coach, you should have gastroenteritis. I have a box of Wei Chongning here. Do you want to try it?" Lin Yinua opened her bag and was about to take out the medicine. Li Zifeng, not only them, even Dai Tinglu and his 2 daughters were no exception. Dai Tinglu said in a low voice, "Xiu, that person is coming out soon. Open your eyes wide and take a good look at him later. In this world, there are many elites that you should pursue. Don't set your sights on a certain person." He glanced at Yi Chun as he spoke to this point. Dai Xiu stuck her tongue out. She wanted to prove it to Yi Chun. "Dad, Mr. Yi is very powerful too. I saw him last time, all right." Dai Tinglu hurriedly interrupted her, looking very unhappy. This last must have been bewitched by this brat, right? He could not help but look at Yi Chun as he thought to this point. He said with a dark face, "I know you've always been arrogant, but your so-called arrogance will be shattered by someone next." Yi Chun was stunned. Subsequently, he shook his head and took a step forward. He lifted his head and looked at Ainshur, who was on the peak. It's not easy for you to comprehend the corpse liberation method with your mortal body. It's worth my time. In an instant, everyone's gazes gathered on him. Brat, what are you doing? Dai Tinglu's expression changed. This is a battle between the powerhouses of the two worlds. Why is a brat like you standing out and saying such nonsense? Even if you're a martial Dao master, you're nothing in front of those two. If you anger the people of Korea's cultivation world, even I won't be able to protect you in front of everyone. He wished he could slap Yi Chun to death as he thought to this point. Even Dai Shiyu and Old Wu were stunned. It's Mr. Yi. Lin Yinua, who was in the crowd, also noticed Yi Chun. She was stunned at first, then her pretty face changed. What's wrong with him? The person they're looking for is Mad Southern Yi, not him. He must have gone crazy from wanting to be famous, so he pretended to be Mad Southern Yi. This brat really doesn't know what's good for him. Chen Feng was so shocked that he sneered. In such an occasion, everyone kept quiet out of fear. If Yi Chun was the only one who jumped out, wasn't he courting death? However, he was gloating. It was as if he could already see Yi Chen's tragic end. Stupid Chinese brat. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Li Zifeng's lips as he squatted on the ground. He thought that Yi Chun was stupid enough to look down on him. He did not expect him to dare to pretend to be Mad Southern Yi. Whoosh! Following a commotion, the crowd around Yi Chun immediately scattered. It was as if they treated Yi Chun like a plague. Even Chen Feng was no exception. He grabbed Lin Yinua's hand and retreated several meters. Only Dai Tinglu and his daughter were still standing next to Yi Chun. When Dai Shiyu came back to her senses, she grabbed Yi Chen's hand immediately. Mr. Yi, don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, you'll be killed. Although she was a little willful, she still knew what was important. Although Yi Chun was powerful, he was far from Inshur and Mad Southern Yi. Brat, hurry up and retreat to the side with me. Dai Tinglu reached out to Yi Chun with a dark expression. I know you want to make a name for yourself. People are calling you Mad Southern Yi. Not you. I'm Mad Southern Yi. Yi Chun rubbed his nose. B****. Dai Tinglu was furious. Although your surname is Yi, you're no match for me with your insignificant strength. How can you be compared to Mad Southern Yi? Yi Chun shook his head lightly. Subsequently, he ignored Dai Tinglu's obstruction and walked out of the crowd step by step. Wherever he passed, countless people made way for him. Their faces were filled with shock. Was this kid really Mad Southern Yi? That was impossible, right? Dai Shiyu wanted to follow him, but Dai Tinglu held her back tingly. She was so anxious that tears were coming out of her eyes. Dad, hurry up and stop Mr. Yi. He'll die. How do you want me to stop him? Dai Tinglu sighed softly. This kid is a bastard who has made up his mind. He insists on taking the initiative to court death. This time, even a mortal won't be able to save him. At the same time, Inshur, who was on the peak, also noticed Yi Chun. His deep voice shook. Young man, the person I'm looking for is Mad Southern Yi. Don't amuse yourself. I believe that no one in this world dares to pretend to be me, Mad Southern Yi. Yi Chun shook his head lightly. Under everyone's shocked expressions, he leaped into the sky like a dragon. He leaped hundreds of meters into the air and landed on the peak in the blink of an eye. The entire place was dead silent. Chapter 515. This. Everyone on the ground sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw Yi Chun leap hundreds of meters away with a single step. He could actually leap over 100 meters. Such a scene could only appear in wuxia novels. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it even if they were beaten to death. Is he really Mad Southern Yi? Someone cried out in surprise. Subsequently, it caused everyone to be extremely shocked. When they saw Yi Chun appear earlier, he had an ordinary appearance and was dressed in ordinary clothes. They thought he was a young man who did not know his limits. They did not expect such a person to be the China #1 that they had been searching for. Mad Southern Yi. This kid is Mad Southern Yi. How is this possible? Even though Dai Tinglu had lived for 70 to 80 years, he could not stop the waves in his heart. Before this, he had many guesses about Yi Chen's identity. For example, he suspected that he was the successor of a certain family, but he had never thought that he was Mad Southern Yi. Most importantly, he still felt that Yi Chun was not worthy of Dai Shiyu. The reason why he approached his daughter was because he had ill intentions. For that, he even warned Yi Chen many times and even said that he wanted to guide Yi Chen. Blurg, thinking to this point, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face alternated between green and white, as if he had overturned a dye vat. This kid really hit it well. Old Wu was dumbfounded. When he thought about how he had attacked the China #1, Mad Southern Yi, he could not help but feel lucky. Lin Yinuo, Chun Feng, and the instructor of the Wuda Taekwondo dojo, Li Zifeng, were even more dumbstruck. They were so shocked that they could not say a word. They could only stare blankly at Yi Chen, who was on the peak. Mr. Yi is actually Mad Southern Yi, Lin Yinuo muttered to herself. She could not accept it, but she subconsciously felt a sense of familiarity. Although Mad Southern Yi was not as handsome as she had imagined, she accepted it very quickly because she was familiar with Yi Chen. How is this possible? How is this possible? After Chen Feng reacted, his face was filled with disbelief. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. How can this kid be Mad Southern Yi? The one who found it the hardest to accept was Li Zifeng. With a thud, he immediately fell to the ground, completely losing his previous arrogant attitude. One had to know that before Yi Chen came to Korea, he had bombarded Yi Chen on Weibo because of his time at Samsung. He even said that as long as Mad Southern Yi dared to step into Korea, he, Li Zifeng, would teach him a lesson. After Yi Chen killed Kim Tiansheng, he realized how powerful Yi Chen was. Therefore, not only did he secretly delete the previous Weibo post, but he also logged off his Weibo account. When he saw Yi Chen, he even put on an arrogant posture. He even challenged Yi Chen, and Yi Chen accepted it. At the thought of this, his legs trembled and he almost fainted. He wanted to seize the opportunity to escape, but he was afraid of attracting Yi Chen's attention. Among all of them, Dai Shiyu was the easiest to accept. Looking at the thin figure on the peak, she was extremely excited. Mr. Yi is Mad Southern Yi. I didn't expect this. No wonder you weren't afraid of offending Xinxingya in Hong Kong, much less Leican. That's right. When has Mad Southern Yi ever been afraid of offending anyone? At that moment, Dai Shiyu felt that the thin figure was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. She had a good impression of Yi Chen before, but Dai Tinglu kept persuading her to look at Mad Southern Yi. At that time, she faintly disliked Mad Southern Yi. However, after Yi Chen and Mad Southern Yi merged, she unknowingly accepted Dai Tinglu's words. Yi Chen ignored the attention on the ground. When he landed less than 30 meters away from Inshur, he stood with his hands behind his back. A golden glow also bloomed from his body. It resonated with the primordial spirit light on Inshur's body. From afar, it looked like two suns were fighting in the sky. Inshur, who was covered in multicolored light, raised his head slowly. After finally accepting the fact that Yi Chen was Mad Southern Yi, he stared at Yi Chen. The China #1, Your Excellency Mad Southern Yi, I've heard of your name for a long time. At that time, I was impressed that the new generation has surpassed the old. China has a successor. I didn't expect that the two of us would be standing on opposite sides today. His gaze was very calm. There was no hatred, only endless admiration and emotion. It was as if to him, there was no nationality in this world. Since you know my name, you should admit defeat. Why do you still dare to challenge me? Yi Chen looked at him calmly with his hands behind his back. His expression was extremely cold. His words infuriated the people from Korea's cultivation world on the ground. If looks could kill, he would have died countless times. Otherwise, Inshur was not angry at all. Instead, he revealed a pure smile. I've been in seclusion for decades, and I've long stopped caring about the cultivation world of Korea. However, you've killed your way into Korea and treated the cultivation world of Korea as nothing. Not to mention killing Jindo and Kim Tiansheng. Even if you kill me, you'll only lose 3 lives. However, in this world, there are many things more important than human lives. For example, the dignity of the country. His eyes were incomparably deep, as if he could see through the sea of stars. I've also learned about the history of China. During the Ming Dynasty, Emperor Zhu Di moved the capital to Beijing to resist the barbarians. At the end of the Ming Dynasty, The mountains and rivers were shattered, and the chaotic army invaded the capital. Emperor Chongzhen refused to flee. Instead, he chose to hang Maishan to show his righteousness of living and dying with the country. Although I'm not as good as Emperor Chongzhen and Emperor Chongzhen, I have the courage and obligation to fight for Korea. Although Korea is small, we can't be humiliated. As his voice fell, the aura on his body became stronger and stronger. This aura was mixed with a strong sense of tragedy. This aura caused everyone's expression to change. If that's the case, let's fight. Yichen smiled lightly and said nonchalantly, "You forced your primordial spirit out of your body. Regardless of the outcome of this battle, you'll definitely die." To the people of Korea's cultivation world, Yi Chun was a demon, a butcher, and an enemy. They could not wait to tear him into pieces. However, to the Chinese, Yi Chun was a warrior who displayed the might of the country. He was a hero in the eyes of all the people in the Chinese cultivation world. Thoughts had no nationality. However, thinkers had nationality. Even he, Yi Chun, was no exception. Ha ha ha. Inshur laughed out loud. When more than 10 people died in front of me that night, I knew that I owed each of them a life. It's time to pay them back. Moreover, it's still unknown who will win. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden glow on his body became even more resplendent. It was as if a golden Buddha had appeared and wanted to suppress the world. Yichen's expression remained the same. His hands behind his back were shining with golden light. Today, the cultivation world of Korea must submit. Chapter 516. A mighty wind blew. Inshur's expression was calm as his aura surged within his body. He had long been invincible in Korea. Part of the reason why he had retired was because he had seen through the affairs of the world, but more importantly, he had no opponents. This was the pride of being an expert, but it was also a misfortune. Now that he was facing Yichun, he felt that he had finally found his opponent. After this battle, I will die without regrets. A carefree smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Subsequently, he bent his knees slightly at Yi Chun with a serious expression. He spread out his hands and slowly extended them forward. His shoulders drooped slightly, and his waist bent slightly. He cupped his fists and bowed to Yi Chun. This was his way of showing respect to his opponent. At the next moment, he took a step forward calmly and walked toward Yi Chun step by step. There was no sand or rocks flying between heaven and earth, nor was there any change in the weather. There were only footprints appearing in the air. It was like a stone thrown into a river, causing ripples to form on the surface of the water. However, every step he took caused the eardrums of everyone on the ground to vibrate endlessly. It was as if he was stepping on their hearts. Too powerful. Inshur is too powerful. Everyone's expression changed. Inshur's cultivation had already reached the acme of perfection, especially his control of his own strength. He would not use any more strength, and it was perfect. Such people were often the most powerful. Only Lin Yinuo and Chun Feng, who were in the crowd, could not tell. As expected of the number one person in Korea, Dai Tinglu sighed softly, and his expression changed. Just this control of strength alone is not something I can compare to. Dad, Mr. Yi. Dai Shiyu bit her lips. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on Yi Chun, and she was slightly worried. Although she did not practice martial arts, her father, Dai Tinglu, was the number one person in Shanghai. Since she was young, she had seen countless experts. Therefore, she could see many things from Inshur. Therefore, she was a little worried about Yi Chun. Let's wait and see. Dai Tinglu shook his head slightly and looked at the sky again. However, he was sizing up Yi Chun, who was standing still. Mad Southern Yi, oh mad Southern Yi, this battle started because of you. It concerns the dignity of the Chinese cultivation world. Whether we can keep it or not depends on you. If you win, I will fulfill your wish with Shiyu. If you lose, this Dai will at most come to your grave for the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Chun Feng, do you think Mr. Yi will win? Lin Yinuo subconsciously grabbed Chun Feng's arm, feeling extremely nervous. Chun Feng replied, perhaps. However, he was sneering in his heart. He could not wait for Yi Chun to die in Inshur's hands. When he was less than 20 steps away from Yi Chun, an explosion suddenly came from the ground. Subsequently, Inshur's ethereal white robe suddenly fluttered. His white hair was like a Milky Way flowing into the sky. Boom! Inshur took another step forward. This one step was like a boulder sinking into a river, stirring up raging waves in the void. A huge ripple quickly spread out in all directions with him at the center. It was incomparably violent. Everywhere it passed, the air was completely torn apart, and even space itself started to distort. Meanwhile, the direction of the energy ripple also included Yi Chun, who was far away. Yi Chun's expression did not change in the face of this attack. He took a step forward with his hands behind his back. A golden energy ripple also spread out from under his feet like a volcano eruption. This energy ripple was condensed from all of his magic power. It contained extremely powerful energy. If an ordinary person were to touch it, they would be torn into pieces in an instant. Boom! The two energy ripples got closer and closer. In the blink of an eye, they collided. Everyone thought that the collision between the two would definitely cause an astonishing explosion. However, the next scene shocked them to their core. When Inshur's energy ripple touched Yi Chun, it was like a ball of cotton. It was easily destroyed by Yi Chun's energy ripple. Moreover, it did not slow down at all. Oh no! Inshur's expression finally changed. He could not care too much. He immediately took another step forward. With a boom, an energy ripple that was even more vast than before charged at Yi Chun again. He wanted to see if it could destroy the energy ripple that was charging at him. In the end, the first wave of attacks from both of them dissipated. The people on the ground could not help but exclaim subconsciously, "It's a draw." Mad Southern Yi actually fought to a draw with Inshur. They could not accept this fact. After all, Inshur was their legend. A draw? Don't flatter yourself. Dai Tinglu could not help but sneer. Inshur took the initiative to attack, and Mad Southern Yi was forced to defend. However, Inshur attacked twice in a row. How is this a draw? He's clearly at a disadvantage. Impudent. Who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously here? A martial artist from Korea said angrily out of humiliation. I'm Dai Tinglu from China. Dai Tinglu scoffed and looked at the martial artist from Korea. You're not convinced, right? Come, let's fight. What? He's the #1 person in Shanghai, Dai Tinglu? Everyone cried out in surprise. When they looked at Dai Tinglu again, their gazes were filled with incomparable fear. The martial artist from Korea was so scared that he retreated. Although the #1 person in Shanghai was not as powerful as the #1 person in China, his reputation was much more resounding than Mad Southern Yi's. Inshur lifted his head to look at Yi Chun in shock. Young friend, you're indeed the #1 person in China. I thought you would have to expend a lot of effort to neutralize my attack, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. You really live up to your reputation. He was truly shocked. No matter how highly he thought of Yi Chun, he could not help but feel that Yi Chun was too young. Even though he was outstanding, he was still not calm enough. However, he did not expect Yi Chun to be like a rock in front of him, unshakable. Most importantly, he was a primordial spirit and had already broken free from the restraints of his physical body. His battle prowess had increased by 30%, but he was at a disadvantage in the first exchange. If that's all you've got, I'll have to send you on your way. Yi Chun stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were as cold as ice. I'm suddenly worried about the cultivation world of Korea. Inshur's expression was bitter as he shook his head slightly and said, Young friend from China is enough to intimidate everyone. It's unfortunate that the cultivation world of Korea has offended you. I won't be at ease if I don't kill you. As soon as he said that, the aura on his body suddenly changed and became sharp. It was like a tiger that had been sleeping for a long time had suddenly woken up and wanted to hunt. The air was filled with endless killing intent. If he had attacked earlier because he wanted to discuss Dao with Yi Chun, he had already made up his mind and was prepared to fight to the death.